Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everybody to the December 12th, 2018 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission. I'd ask everybody to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the record will reflect that all commissioners are present tonight. Can we get an introduction of staff?
Stacy Webb, Recording Secretary for the Planning Commission.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Eric Poche, Parish Planner.
Sean Schroe, Engineering Review Agency.
All right, moving on to the chairman's comments. The chair has no comments tonight, but we'll turn the floor over to Mr. Jerome Fournier to provide us an update on the master use plan agreement presented by CPEX.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'd like to state that on the November 28th and 29th, CPEX and staff conducted a series of vision workshops. This is a presentation of the vision map that was crafted by them based on the previous meetings, public meetings that we had with the general public. And at that, we made a presentation of what the vision would be. It was a draft that is going through revisions now based on the comments that were received at those meetings. We also met this afternoon with the CPEX staff to craft a schedule for taking this before you next year. And we hope to get something in the form of a workshop with all the commissioners around April of next year. And during that time frame, they're going to be drafting the language that accompanies the maps, all the different policies and everything else that's associated with this. We'd like to get this to you for approval in late spring, early summer, and then from there it'll go to the parish council for approval. All right? If you have any questions, I'd like to answer them.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fournier, some of the things that I saw on the latest draft, I had a few concerns, and it's just what I'd like to ask is if y'all can possibly do some more tightening up on it. And I'll give you 3 examples, and this can be applied throughout the whole way. But, for instance, up and down the commercial corridor of Highway 61, Airline Highway, basically through Prairieville, the commercial recommendations or the lineage of it extends far beyond into a lot of the prevalent residential zones. And if we can maybe have that tightened up and have a set boundary or something, basically it's up to the railroad tracks if you really look at it.
Right.
And maybe see that on both sides just so we can have a little bit more clear delineation on it.
Okay.
Up and down Highway 44, that's in the parish side, north of Airline Highway, that's really, we've kind of had that more as a commercial, and it's all listed as residential, up and down 44. Now the crossroads, 621, Cannon, Black Bayou, all those, that's more residential, but we've kind of been pushing that more toward commercial on that thoroughway. And then Highway 30 near Tanger, right now it's all industrial, and last year we zoned something like 100-something acres industrial, but that's all marked as commercial. And so I'd like to see a little bit more accuracy on this as we're starting to get closer to it, if at all possible.
And just as a note, the blobs that you saw, I call them blobs, they're rather conceptual, you know, and I will relay that message to CPEX on your behalf, all right? And I would agree with that on Highway 44. That's a comment that I made to them as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, moving on to item number 6 on the agenda. This is a public comment on any agenda item. There are many public hearings scheduled for tonight, so if you have signed up to speak on one of those matters, you'll get your opportunity when we open the public hearing. But if you want to speak on any other issue that's not set for a public hearing, now's the time to do that.
I have
Just on this, okay.
Jeff Pettit.
Mr. Pettit. And please keep your comments, remember, tonight to 3 minutes.
Shouldn't take that long. Good evening, gentlemen. Section 17-405 of our Unified Land Development Code says if the subdivider does not submit the final plat and construction plans within 6 months of the approval of the preliminary plat, the commission may have the right to rescind approval of the preliminary plat. I would ask that, I've heard this body over and over again, and I don't disagree with it, stating that when the development meets all codes, that you have no choice but to approve it. Over and over again, I've heard that. Well, here we have some plats that don't meet our code. It's black letter law. I would ask that this commission, we have two right now at the 6-month mark. Oak Grove Townhomes has not met the statute, and Jamestown 1 and 2 have not met the statute. I would ask that this body place those items back on the agenda and discuss and decide whether we're going to follow the law or not, or are we going to bend it to suit the will of the developers and ignore the citizens of the parish. I'd ask that you consider the citizens of the parish with the same fervor that you have considered the developers. Thank you.
And I would just say to that, the operable word there is may. There's always issues that come up with development that sometimes that 6-month mark is hard to reach. But correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but every preliminary plat that hits that 6-month mark comes before us to be reviewed, correct?
Typically, yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Actually, Matt,
Catherine Gobble.
he misread the code. It actually does say shall.
Okay.
Doesn't say may. He misread it. It says shall have the right to rescind.
But shall have the right to rescind.
Right.
Yes.
Not that
We
you
have the right to
rescind it.
rescind.
Right,
We're not
that you have to
obligated
rescind
to.
it, but
Right.
but yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Good evening,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
hold on for a second, Ms. Coppell. Yes.
One of the things I do have to say about it is, it does say that it has to be the final plat and construction plans, and from what I understand, what we've been doing is, it has only been if construction plans have not been filed, that we've had them come to us within the 6 months. So is it basically that we're just not following what is the code wrong? Is there a possibility of that? And I just asked staff to, what is the real clarification here? Because, I mean, it might take 2 years for a final plat to be ready, and that's past the 6-month mark. And so are we going to have a developer come in every 6 months or every 3 months or whatnot past that? And I'd just like to ask staff for a little bit of clarification.
There's not a requirement that you take any action on it. There are other sections of the code that says if then. This one does not. It just says that if those two things do not happen, then you shall have the right to rescind the plat. There's no requirement that you do so.
Mm-hmm.
The only requirement or the only portion of the code that there is an if then is a little bit farther along where it says that if they have not began construction within 24 months of the final preliminary plat approval, then the preliminary plat will be automatically rescinded unless they come to you and are granted an extension.
But I guess my question dovetailing on that is, if both, because the commission does have the right, not that you have to exercise it or even should exercise it or would exercise it, but if we do have the right to rescind the plat if both the final plat and construction plans have not been filed within 6 months, and we're not being told that that's happening, then we're not getting the opportunity to decide whether we want to exercise that provision. So I think in the circumstances where at least both of those have not been met, we should at least be notified and given the opportunity to decide if we want to exercise the provision H or not.
Well, because the final plat, the construction plans are typically not noticed to the planning commission. The final plats are noticed, obviously, because once they apply for a final plat, it comes on the agenda and comes before you. I have no idea why that was put into the code. There has been discussion about that because typically no one submits their final plat when they submit their construction plans.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the intent was originally behind that, but we have discussed it internally with staff before to maybe change that because it's not really practical.
These
I
are
mean,
some
the
of the
rights
items that-
presented to us at that 6-month mark, whether we exercise it or not, and maybe until the legislation is fixed, or unless the legislation is fixed, you can just give us a list of things that are more than 6 months old, and we can decide whether we're going to exercise that right during that meeting.
We'll be pleased to do that.
Yes, sir.
In the
If you-
future.
if
And
you
we can
wouldn't
talk
mind.
about the mechanics of doing that later. But to move on, yes, Ms. Coppell.
Thank you. Good evening. The CPEX master plan is, of course, outside consultants. They don't live here. They're taking comments from the people, but the plan itself is to urbanize the rural areas of Ascension Parish. That's the goal. That's not really what the people want. There's 3 things that we should be looking at. I don't know if you're discussing this with council members, but you should be. 1 is the carrying capacity of the land, and 2 is the parish's ability financially to support future development. And we have a great deficit of infrastructure dollars right now, and adding more development only increases it. And 3rd, the desire of the public to increase the development. Now, the 3rd one, we know people don't want more development at the not dealing with infrastructure first. That's the point. Infrastructure first. We'll be talking about this later shortly with another item on the agenda. But I would really ask you to look, when you look at this master plan, I want you to think about what the people in the parish want. Not what you want, not what this consultant wants, what the people want. That's really what you're supposed to be doing. Why, I know you have to do these public hearings, but the people really believe, and as they watch the process go forward, that we're not really being listened to. Thank you so much.
Teresa Robert.
Thank you. I'm not going to take 3 minutes, but I'd like to verbalize what Catherine was saying. As we've participated in these hearings, there's been 3 sets of public hearings. We've turned out a lot of people that are very busy, don't have time, trying to raise their families, working, et cetera. We go into these hearings, we come back and go to the next one, and they're not listening. Even you, sitting up here as planning and zoning commissioners, will admit that we have inadequate infrastructure all over this parish. We have
What's the
substandard.
solution? And you can get
The
extra time.
solution is-
Well, let me ask the question. If somebody wants to come develop their land, and we have laws that say you got to follow this and follow that and follow this thing, then they can do that. We have no ability to put infrastructure in. Are you proposing a moratorium on all development in this
We're
parish?
not proposing a moratorium, and we're not telling you cannot develop in this parish. We're saying
Well, then wouldn't it
that
be
we're-
crucial
well,
to
but
have
just a second, we're
a
saying-
plan on how to develop in the parish?
That's right, but what we are saying is that this proposal is more than tripling the residential development throughout the parish. We're not telling you not to develop. We're not telling you people can't do what they want with their property. We're telling you, and I've gone and I've talked to people all the time, and there's so many people that would like to participate, but they're so busy. People do not want to become a city like Baton Rouge and New Orleans. We don't want to be urbanized. We want to be suburban. We're not telling you not to develop. We're not telling you not to permit things. We're just telling you don't all of a sudden try to triple our density. And more than anything else, if we had infrastructure in place, if we had good roads, it took me 15 minutes to go from the interstate to my house, which is less than a mile. These kind of things, people face this every day. We do not have parish-wide sewage. We do not have good drainage. The flood of 2 years ago, that tells you, and every time it rains, people are frightened. We're just asking you again, they keep saying this is the people's plan. It's not the people's plan. We're trying to participate, but how can you participate in how to set up the growth and where you want your commercial and you want all this when they keep giving you these numbers that they're more than tripling what is allowed today?
But doesn't it make sense that if you're not arguing for a moratorium, so you're allowing development, doesn't it make sense to have an updated plan that addresses the growth that we've had and the growth that is projected to come? I mean, short of saying, no, you can't come here, don't we want a plan to how that growth develops? I'm confused on the argument.
confused.
I understand that we need more infrastructure. And I wish the state would take care of that because most of our roadways are state highways. All we're doing is trying to get an updated, modern plan that the old master plan is 30 years old and had statistics that were way short of what happened over the last 30 years. So all we're doing is update that plan. I don't understand why there's an opposition to a plan. It's not saying come build. It's saying if you're coming, here's the requirements that you have to meet.
And I don't understand why you're saying that we're being against the plan. We're not against the plan. We're against
So you support the
developing a
master
plan
plan?
with the present densities. Yes, let's look at where we want to extend our commercial and keep our residential in there. We're just saying we do not want to triple our densities in doing this. We're saying we want to remain suburban. We're not fighting the plan. We're fighting the fact that people keep coming out, they keep participating, and they are ignored. You're just saying, oh, well, we're gonna triple this and bring all this stuff in here. And basically, as Ms. Catherine said, nobody likes that word, but urbanized people that live here, most of them
Then
moved here
how do you stop the urbanization? What solution
you
to
don't
stop?
triple. You don't
Well,
triple.
we're not
your
doing anything.
densities.
We're just making a plan that when people come, and you said we're for development, so the developers come. Well, here's the plan that you have to fit into if you want to develop in our parish.
Exactly.
It's not saying you can't come, or it's not saying come on. It's just saying this is a guideline rather than what it is now,
Not
which is
when
kind of
you-
helter-skelter.
Not
to
when
be
you're
honest with
tripling
you.
the density, though.
Mr.
That's the whole
Schexnayder,
point.
he
I just have one question. You said that we're tripling the density. Currently, the highest density that we're allowing is still 4 houses per acre.
No.
Okay.
We have the 9.6 now.
Okay.
They supposedly took out the 7.5, and
But
I'm sure
what
they
I'm
took it out
asking-
because the people keep hollering. But 9.6 homes and retail per acre, it has to go up. It's got to be cities.
But what I'm asking is that for right now, we're not making any changes, and they are, and I'm just asking, I
know,
don't have
I'm trying to
yeah.
listen. I'm trying to
And
answer whatever
so-
you're asking me.
I know that they're maybe recommending that maybe they might have more places in that 9.6, but that hasn't changed or anything else. And in those places where they might have recommended it, they do have and have recommended major infrastructure in those areas to support if they did go with a higher density, which is kind of agreeing with what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you under any circumstances. I kind of agree that we shouldn't have more density at all.
Wade, we've been promised that forever. We've been promised that since we implemented the plan. We've always been promised that we're going to develop infrastructure as we continue building. I mean, why should we feel like y'all going to do that when you haven't done it yet? And y'all sit here and y'all keep saying these state roads. I do agree these state roads are really terrible, but I'm sorry, our little bitty 2-lane local roads that have no shoulders and you have so much, you cannot move in this parish today, anytime, in the morning or in the evening, that you're not bumper to bumper. People cannot move. So why would you be talking about tripling the residential? And then you're sitting here and talking about the airline highway. I don't live on the airline highway, but I do know people that live off of that airline highway. You can't move on the airline highway. I've been having to take the airline because they're doing construction on the interstate. You can't move on the interstate. I mean, you can't move on the airline highway. It's bumper to bumper, light to light. So we're going to, put these things. I don't know what the answer is, except that if we could ever sit down and instead of having stakeholders that nobody knows, and these are good business people, and I've talked to a few of them and that I know, and they're not into pushing all this high density. They're just sitting there just like you are, trying to appeal and be good business developer people, movers, progress, I guess. Let's figure it out. Let's work something out together and let everybody buy in to it. And I'm telling you, our sticking thing is if we had the infrastructure, if the pressure was put on the state, the parish even did their duty and did it, we would sit back and we'd say, well, if we have the infrastructure and we can handle it, who are we to stop it? We truly would. I'm just trying to be honest with you.
I don't disagree on the infrastructure point, but that's a
But how do you
that's a
triple it?
criticism that could be said anywhere in our surrounding area. The infrastructure in the capital area is tremendously poor. It is a shame that our state government lets that go on. But that being said,
you're doing it too when you're sitting.
I have no
pushing
ability to create infrastructure, to fund infrastructure. None of us do here. All we get is developments that come to us, and the question is, does it meet the legal standards of what the parish sets forth? And right now, the legal standards are codified, but there's no plan for growth. So you could have a small 2-lane road, like you said, where a subdivision could come in, and as long as that road's wide enough and they meet all the criteria, then you know what, we're bound to approve it. So what we've tried to do, and what CPEX, as I understand, is trying to do, is direct that growth that's coming. We can't put up the wall. The growth is coming, so let's have a plan to accommodate it. Because quite frankly, Mr. Robert, for the last several years, we've been putting our head in the sand and saying, well, we don't want this. We don't want all this growth, so we're not going to do a plan. A plan is bad. Well, no, a plan is good because it gives the growth that is coming. Unless you tell them, don't come, you stay away from Ascension Parish, build everywhere else, but don't come to Ascension Parish, then we need a plan to do it. And that's all this is
We're not against a plan. We're against building a plan on tripling the density. We're not against the plan.
The plan
have
isn't to
fewer
triple the
density.
density.
The plan is to triple the density.
The plan is to set guidelines on where the growth can be going.
No, that's
it's
not
not
true.
saying come in, it's saying if you come in, here's where we go.
Our whole map has a whole new set of residential and categories. You're more than tripling the density. It's not just a map. When you don't have the same categories and the categories are more than tripling the map, I don't see how you can argue that. We're sitting here, we need a counselor or something. I'm telling you I'm not against a plan. I want a plan. I don't want to build a plan on tripling the density. I want my infrastructure set. I want to be able to move in this parish. I want to be able to get to the shopping center. I want my husband to be able to go to the businesses. I want people, no one's against people coming in here. But you don't keep on, and y'all blame the state, and the state blames y'all. The state, when we get on state roads, the state says, well, they're the locals, and they're the ones that keep passing all these subdivisions and all this stuff, and if we triple it, you'll be the one doing it. And then y'all sit here and say, well, these are the state roads, and we keep telling them, fix the roads. But we're tripling the density, and we
No,
continue.
all I've said is, I got the book right here. Does your development meet these guidelines? Or these laws? And if they do, then that's what we have to
But
do.
that's not what we're arguing tonight.
She does have a very good point, and one of the points that she's making is it's one of the recommended, I think it's the neighborhood sections, and they do have that
More
section
than
part is
triples.
called for a higher density, and they are recommending that there are various points in the map. And I
That
think
if it
that's one
comes,
of the things that you are
this is
kind
the
of.
places that we're gonna put that if somebody wants to do that, rather than picking a 2-lane road to build
Right.
up a
And that's all
townhouse
that just needs- I think that
complex or
just
whatever.
needs to be understood from everybody.
We've batted
Thank
this,
you.
but thank you, Ms. Robert.
Kim Christie?
The People, 2019. My name is Kim Christie, and I'd like to read an email from a citizen that she wrote to her councilman in District 7. What is the status with the weir work drainage improvements on Charleston at Willow Lakes? Dan and Bruce bought the land at the southeast corner of 42 and Jefferson for Oak Grove townhomes to be developed. Probably put up the $100,000 to the parish for the drainage repairs needed. And I have not heard a peep since, except that there was confirmation that their traffic impact study was not worth the paper that it was printed on which we suspected all along. Please do not fail us. This cannot be developed without the proper drainage improvements to be put in place that we were ensured would happen. In return, to not fight the development at the Planning Commission discussion this past March, and that was dated April 1st, 2018. And I'd like to read a letter from the parish to a citizen in that community as well. After internal discussion with parish staff, I'm writing this note per your request to have the parish involved in the modification of the ponds as it relates to the drainage at the Willow Lake subdivision. The parish has determined that this matter is private and between the property owners within the Willow Lake subdivision, the Willow Lake Homeowners Association, and the developer of the Oak Grove townhomes, Danton Bruce. The parish will not be involved in the drainage discussions beyond the approval of the preliminary plat for the Oak Grove townhomes, which occurred March 14, 2018. And I won't continue, but the point is, you put the citizens of the parish in a practically a no-win situation. It would cost more than $100,000 to identify and repair improve their drainage situation. It's time to rescind Oak Grove Townhomes. Do what's right for the citizens of Ascension. Thank you.
David Bernard.
Good evening, and I promise I'm really going to be short. We just heard a couple of discussions about infrastructure and development. It seems as part of this CPEX plan, possibly they can formulate a way to tie future development to improvements to infrastructure. Make it a mathematical formula that would, say, allow you X amount of development for an improvement in capacity of the traffic and the drainage system. It seems to me we can put some numbers on this and make it more of a less subjective process. If the parish provides infrastructure that allows for development, that would be great. And if the state helps us out, that would be great. But if that doesn't happen, we can't keep approving developments and just turn a blind eye to the lack of infrastructure. So if we could just tie the two things together, that might give us a little bit more stability or faith in the system. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Moving on, item number 7 is our general business. That moves us to item number 8 is approval or denial of the minutes and written decisions of the November 14th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Do I have a motion on that?
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Schexnayder. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Number 9, public hearing to approve or deny the following variance request: Oak Lake subdivision phases 2 and 3 final plat. This is by Quality Engineering and Surveying LLC, a request for a variance of Ascension Parish Regulations 17-408.C1, acceptance of improvements and posting a maintenance bond. And then if we do grant the variance, this will we'll move on to the consideration of the final plat later on in the meeting. Staff.
The staff has before you, and we've had some comments from the developer on this project, D.R. Horton, and I'd like to present them, have them make their presentation on the possible fix to this problem.
Right? Good evening. My name is Jake Lambert. I'm the Land Acquisitions Manager for the Capital Region for D.R. Horton. And I'm here before you tonight in a spirit of humility and cooperation. Last month we came before this board seeking a variance to our preliminary plat approval that had the condition that before final plat was approved, there had to be either a roundabout or a right turn lane be constructed leading into our subdivision. We took your comments and considerations and concerns for the opposition to us requesting that variance into consideration, and we ended up pulling our variance request last month. We spent this entire month meeting with the folks that have voiced concern to this request. Namely, we've met with the members of the planning staff of the parish. We've met with several of the planning commission members. We've met with the parish councilman for that district, who also happens to be the council chairman. We've even met with several members of the community here that are here to speak tonight about the project. And universally, everyone has acknowledged that we have performed our obligations and our duties and responsibilities in the development of this subdivision in accordance with the requirements of Ascension Parish. They've also acknowledged that we went above and beyond our duties by being the first development in the parish to go through the Traffic Impact Fee Credit Agreement Program. Everyone has acknowledged that we actually took our private dollars and invested them in the public infrastructure by constructing 725-foot of road widening on Highway 44, which is a state highway, which we were just talking about. Everyone's acknowledged those things, but everybody that has concerns about approval of this project has expressed the same concern, and it's that there is still not a roundabout or a right turn lane leading into this subdivision and the potential safety hazards that that causes. I'm here before you tonight to discuss a potential solution to that problem. In our DOTD permit that we received in May of this year, the scope and the conditions of that permit specify in what's called a letter of compliance the conditions that the permit grants. Our specific letter of compliance that was written on January 30th, 2018 states 3 conditions. Number 1, that we are granted 1 permanent full access to our subdivision, basically the entrance that is constructed and open and functioning. Number 2, it specifies that we are to construct 725 foot of road widening on Highway 44, and of which that is constructed, but it is not open to traffic right now because of the overriding permit from the development across the street that is going to connect to what we have constructed when the roundabout comes. The third provision is what I'm here to discuss tonight. In addition to those 2 provisions, our DOTD permit grants us 1 temporary access driveway into our development. And so what we would propose, it just so happens that the permit specifies where on Highway 44 that this temporary access could be installed, and we've withheld 2 lots from construction, home construction. And this temporary access road, according to the permit we've received from DOTD, allows us temporary access only during the construction of the roundabout. What we propose is to take the road widening that is constructed but not in service yet because there's nothing to connect to it, restripe it as a right turn lane, and construct this temporary access so that all of the concerns of the folks that we've heard, the outpouring of concern for the safety of the motorists on Highway 44 can be addressed. We feel like this is a agreeable solution. Certainly we will work diligently to implement it. During the functioning, the opening of this temporary access, we're willing to put barricades in front of the the existing access so that there will be no safety issues about access from there. And we feel like this is an agreeable solution. We've listened to you guys, what your concerns are. We've listened to the concerns of the parish council chairperson for this district. We've worked with the planning staff, and we've even listened to the folks that are here tonight to voice concern about the progress of our project. And what we're seeking tonight is actually a clarification. If you guys will give us some clarification that we can proceed in this manner, then we will go and implement this according to the appropriate rules and standards dictated in the permit. And then at that point, once it's constructed, functional, vetted by the parish staff, inspected, that then we will come back before this board and seek full final plat approval, at which time we will be able to proceed with the development of our project.
So are you withdrawing the request for the variance tonight?
I'm first seeking clarification if we do that. But
Well, what's on the agenda is a public hearing to approve or deny the variance that's been requested. So, as I understand it, I mean, that's what we're dealing with right now. So if you're pulling that request, then we have to approve to amend the agenda and consider that. Am I wrong on that, staff?
looking for a little guidance here, guys. We're trying to work with you.
No, but we were here last month and for guidance. But what's on the agenda is a public hearing to vote up and down on the variance request.
Certainly.
Well, we don't have legal counsel tonight. He was not able to attend. But I would surmise that I think you can entertain Mr. Lambert's request right now, and then at that point make a decision as to whether you want to pull the variance or, you know.
I'm not pulling the variance, but if there's a request to pull the variance, I
Right.
think at this stage, I
If
mean,
he
this is.
requests to pull the
This is the
variance.
second time it's come before us for a public
Right.
hearing
Right.
on this issue, and now well, we want guidance on this, which we did last month, and it got pulled off. But that was before the meeting, as I remember, it was pulled off the agenda before the meeting
It was.
commenced.
But we granted Mr. Lambert an opportunity to speak at the last meeting
We
as
did.
well. Yeah, so,
We've worked really hard to resolve the issues and the concerns of all parties involved. And seeking some guidance that if we go forward with this, in accordance with the requirements that are before us, the permit documents, the
Chair.
planning staff.
Mr. Dumas.
I think what you're trying to get at is to get a feel from us as to whether or not this satisfies the intent of the original condition of approval, and that's very difficult for us to do because we don't have it before us.
Don't have,
We don't have what you're proposing for us
well,
to review. So what I would,
sure.
my suggestion might be, it might be best for you to just seek a postponement and come back with you know, a drawing, you know, something that you can present to us and get staff's review of it and recommendation. And then the whole application is for this to be considered as a solution for your existing condition of approval. And at that time, I don't know that would be a variance as much as it would be an amendment to the
No,
condition of approval.
No, actually, what it would be is if we were to construct this in accordance with the DOTD standards of the right turn lane into our development, then we would specifically have achieved the requirements of the preliminary plan approval.
Not exactly.
Not exactly, because.
The-
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
sorry,
You-
go ahead.
Oh,
You want-
give the floor to Mr. Chasson.
Yeah.
The requirement actually also requires a northbound left turn lane.
No,
And
sir.
The executive summary, which is what it was on, says the turn lane warrant analysis indicates that the proposed development warrants an exclusive northbound left turn lane and a southbound right turn lane on LA 44. And when you look at the minutes, Bob Turner states, the condition is that if a roundabout is not constructed, they must do the turn lanes, plural, as stipulated in the traffic impact study. And then Ricky Compton, shortly after that, says, when they come to you for the final plat of the second filing, I'm not even sure what the lot total is, but if that roundabout is not there and there's no turn lanes, again, plural, I would suggest we seriously consider whether we approve the final plat based on that issue. And that's when Matt made his motion at that point to approve subject to the stipulation of the conditions that Ricky and Bob
Okay.
were referencing, and there's never any reference of a right turn lane only.
Every conversation that we've had over the last 2.5 months has only included a right turn lane, so
Somebody may
we'll have to evaluate that.
misinterpreted the minutes, but as I'm reading
Sure,
reading
yes,
it,
sir.
it seems like it requires both. Just-
I'm happy to discuss
Just to
that.
offer my guidance
Yeah,
again,
yes,
just
sir.
based on what I saw, because I wasn't here last month, I was sick, so.
Yes, sir. No problem. You know. Yeah, sure. This is,
My name is Andy St. Romain. I'm a developer also. I think to clarify, in terms of the question you asked, Mr. Pryor, we would not request the variance tonight.
So you're going to withdraw it?
Correct. But certainly address questions presented to us and have people here to address questions and hopefully if we can use
Well,
this as an
if you're going
opportunity.
to, I don't know that I ever remember dealing with a request to withdraw an agenda item at the meeting itself. Usually they come in beforehand and it's taken off the agenda. And I'm not even sure of my authority on that, so I'm going to put it up for a vote as to whether or not we allow the withdrawal tonight. Whether it goes out, because I think that's the safest thing to do, to be honest with you. But regardless of whether we pull it off or not pull it off, I'm going to allow the public hearing for the people who've come here to speak about it to be heard about it.
Sure.
And I really think the best thing to do, and look, I've met with y'all several times in the interim, and Jake, I've told you before, you make a compelling argument as to why. However, that being said, there was a record made of the motion that was made back in 2015 and the approval that was made. In my opinion, based on what I've seen, if I don't see those requirements being met, then I'm going to stay by the original motion that I made. And I'm not saying that's a deadlock certainty, but that's where I've thought about this for a long time. So that being said, I will entertain a motion from the commission as to whether or not we will allow the withdrawal at this point.
Do you want to do the public hearing first, or?
We
Because
should-
if you
we
remove
should
it
have
from
at
the,
least-
because if you remove it from the agenda.
I'm going to allow the public hearing to go forward regardless.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would suggest that we actually get a statement from the developer asking that you take a vote to remove the item from the agenda. Right?
Okay.
Because it has to be at their request.
Right. And then also, I mean, Mr. Chasson did bring up that, his point, and I just want y'all to at least be aware of that is something that we are looking at as well. That kind of seems to be caught off guard by it, but now that we're looking back at this, that is something that's valid, that is in the staff report.
We'll certainly take that
and
into
so-
consideration.
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you for pointing it out. Sure.
Do we have official request to
We'd
withdraw?
like to withdraw our request for the variance.
Do we have a motion to permit the withdrawal?
I'd like to make that move,
Move
make
by
that
Mi-
motion.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Chasson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, we are going to open the public hearing on this. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're here to speak about this, I'm going to allow that to proceed. Whether you decide to speak or not does not mean that you cannot speak when this comes up again, because if another variance does come up, or if this variance is put for us again, we will have another public hearing. So you may choose to speak, you may not choose to speak. It will not jeopardize your rights to speak when and if this is presented to us again. So that being said, we'll go down the list one by one.
Kim Christie,
Ms. Christie, thank you, ma'am.
Jeff Pettit,
Mr. Pettit? Mr. Pettit passes.
Teresa Robert,
And again, I would ask you mind the 3-minute rule, which I will grant extensions if I rudely interrupt like I did before.
Boy, I know that 3-minute rule. I've lived it for 40 years. I'm glad to do it. Look, our biggest concern out there is we can't move again. As I told you, it took me 15 minutes. I thought surely there was an accident there this evening. Donaldsonville, the Sunshine Bridge is reopened temporarily. Praise God for those people. I don't know how they did that hour and 20-minute trip or whatever, but the traffic is a nightmare. I understand that the roundabout is supposed to have already started. I talked to Scott in Gonzales, and he texted me today. I don't see any equipment. I don't see anything out there. No one is against H.R. Horton having their right to build, but they were supposed to build the first part, and then we were supposed to have a roundabout or these lanes to ease some of this congestion. Again, out of humility and cooperation with you, Jake, I think it's really nice that you built this lane that you had to build, and it doesn't begin anywhere and it doesn't end anywhere, but I understand how it behooves the public who travels that road, for the people who are buying in their subdivision and they want to continue building without the infrastructure there, for them to be able to get in and out of go in that road where they're, it's your own private development. It doesn't help the public. So again, we'll be back next month. We're not trying to hurt them, but we're fixing to have one heck of a year with them building that roundabout that's been more than needed. And again, I can't see allowing them to put many more houses back there when we can't take care of what we have now, and we have what's going on at Conway and everything else around. But thank you. And I'm 1 minute and 60 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you.
Joe Robert,
That's it? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on that and move on. This next subdivision variance request regards Melgrave subdivision.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
We did have a request by Mr. Dawson's letter.
You are correct, and I did, thank you for reminding me. Before we move on, we did receive, all of the commissioners received a letter dated today from Bill Dawson, who is the chairman of the Ascension Parish Council, and the councilman for that district, and I would like to read that in the record, dated December 12, 2018, Planning and Zoning Commissioners. I noticed on tonight's Planning and Zoning agenda a request by the Oak Lake developers to add a contingency or variance so they can obtain approval to sell lots in phases 2 and 3. This development is in my council district, and because it is in an area of high traffic congestion, I have been following it very closely. I have received several calls from residents in this area expressing their opposition to granting these exceptions. I agree with these residents that we should not grant any exceptions to the commitments made by the developers upon submittal of the preliminary plat. Additionally, the council has recently authorized the parish attorney to submit an ordinance that would eliminate variances and contingencies to final plats. This ordinance is on the agenda for Thursday, December 13th, 2018. Thank you for all your service on the commission and for your consideration on this matter. Because of a prior commitment, I will not be able to attend tonight's meeting, but please feel free to read this correspondence into the public record. Sincerely, Bill Dawson, Ascension Parish Council Chairman, District 2. So that will be part of the record. Ms. Stacy, if you could make that part of our official record on this.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman? Right, yeah. I think just for the record, it should be noted that there were two items under that particular heading, and since the first one has been pulled, the second will not be considered.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, item number 9B involves the Melgrave subdivision, and I will tell you that I have a conflict of interest in making any comments and/or voting on this, so I will recuse myself and discharge my ministerial duties as the chairman to hold this public meeting, but it will be taking no further participation in this. So with that being said, staff, would you like to, this is the Melgrave subdivision final plat, Quality Engineering and Surveying LLC, request for a variance of the Ascension Parish Regulations, section 17408C1 and 17401.2.g, acceptance of improvements and approval of final plat procedure, and then if the variance is requested in item 9B is approved, then consideration on the final plat. Staff, do you want to comment on this before I turn it over to Mr. Murphy?
Only to say that this item was considered at a previous meeting, and you granted permission for this project to move forward based on a couple of conditions that were placed on the street section, as well as the fact that they cannot move forward until they get a jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers for wetlands. Before you tonight is another consideration on this project, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Derek Murphy, who can describe that for you. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy.
Commissioners, my name is Derek Murphy with Quality Engineering and Surveying, representing the project Melgrave subdivision tonight. Like Mr. Jerome said, this has been before you a few times. Tonight we've basically have done all procedural items. We have the preliminary plat, the final plat, the construction plans, the as-built documents, engineer certification, and a final inspection on this project to date. So everything that's needed for a typical subdivision of any sorts has been accomplished. It has been turned in, has been approved. We're here tonight to ask for the variance on the two lots 10A and 9A, which presently have houses built on those, and we're asking for a release of addresses on those two lots. So we're asking for all the other lots on this, in this plat, to be considered a non-building site until we have our wetlands delineation back from the Corps, which hopefully will not be much longer. But we do have one house that is, I think both houses now are finished, and we're looking to let them have their addresses and move on. Y'all know the history of this project. So tonight we're asking, we have jumped through, I won't say the hoop, but the process, and we are completed with the process. And we're asking tonight for the variance on lots 10A and 9A for the two residents that have the houses that are built on those lots.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
What we have here is we have two third-party individuals who are injured, potentially injured individuals. We have a young couple who's bought a house, went to close on it, and discovered the plat wasn't recorded. In another home, and they're paying rent and potentially have their mortgage at risk, or at least their interest rates going up. And another home that the builder has built who is unable to get a CO on. In the interest of protecting the interest of these two individuals that the developer failed to mention at any part through this process, I worked with legal and staff to come up with a mechanism for them to be able to move forward with those two houses and prohibit that. I know it's premature to make a motion, but what I propose to do is to move to grant the variance and allow the plat to be recorded with a prohibition that no further building permits may be issued on any other lot other than lots 9A and 10A until such time as that jurisdictional letter from the Army Corps of Engineers is received by the parish.
We can't do a motion right now.
Right, I know.
We're going to open a public hearing unless anybody has any other questions, Mr. Murphy, before we move on. We'll open a public hearing on this, Ms. Stacy.
I don't have any.
Nobody signed up to speak on this issue, so we'll close the public hearing.
I have a comment.
Question on the wetland study.
Go ahead.
They haven't gotten the answer on the wetland study.
Everything has been turned into the Corps, and as normal, we're at their mercy.
And I mean, in the event that this is turned down, or you find that,
There's a wetlands?
yeah,
The developer is responsible for that.
And
okay,
we'll have to
Property
do,
owners,
if there is any wetlands on these two lots, there'll have to be an after-the-fact permit done with the Corps of Engineers, and that's on who did the violation.
But my issue with this one is, and I'm sure everybody's aware, the circumstances in which this subdivision was built to begin with, and developer was told he couldn't do certain things, and he did them anyway, and variances were granted. In my opinion, again, the variance is 174093 B4. It's hardship complained of cannot be self-created, nor can it be established on this basis by one who purchases with or without knowledge of the restrictions, which would be the third parties who purchased the lot. Granting the variance, you're basically bailing out a developer who specifically did something he was instructed not to do. And at what point do we just continue to roll over? I mean, there are recourses available to the people who purchased the lots. I don't know that we should be the ones getting involved when the code specifically says we're not supposed to.
Well, to clarify, the developer did get approval to build campsites.
Camps.
And what happened
And
is...
not put in a permanent road, and the addresses had to be accessible by
water.
And
Right,
now
and-
he built houses, not camps, put in a permanent road, and wants addresses accessible by the road and not the water. Right? Am I misinterpreting any of that?
No, that is correct.
That's how it all happened.
You've summarized correctly.
So it's a hardship created by the developer, and yes, it's an injured third party, but the code clearly says the hardship cannot be self-created, nor can it be established on this basis by one who purchases with or without knowledge of the restrictions. And it must, it doesn't meet the requirements for a variance. That's my position.
Okay.
You want to make your motion?
Yeah, my motion stands. I move that we grant this approval subject to a prohibition that any other lots obtain any permits until such time as a jurisdictional letter and any subsequent permit that the Army Corps may require be granted, and that permits for lots 9A and 10A be permitted.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Christie? Mr. Chasson?
No.
Mr. Schexnayder?
No.
All right, so we have a tie vote. I think tie goes means the motion does not carry.
That's correct.
I'll entertain any other motion.
Motion to deny the variance.
Motion to deny the variance by Mr. Chasson, second.
Second.
So by Mr. Schexnayder, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Nay.
Do a roll call vote. Mr. Dumas?
No.
Mr. Furman?
No.
Mr. Bishop?
No.
Mr. Christie? Yes. Mr. Chasson?
Yes.
Mr. Schexnayder?
Yes.
So again, we have a tie. So the variance didn't get granted. It didn't get denied, so I don't know where I think the status quo remains.
I mean, I understand what everybody is saying, but if it was me and this was my house that I've built and put every dollar that I personally had into a house that I now can't do anything with, and my the only thing that I have is legal ramifications. My house sitting there, my dream house that I just put every dollar, got more, construction loan. So this is the builder, one of the builders who's going to be stuck with this house. And so I understand about to create it, but these people are unwitting, unknowing, and I know that's part of the code and so forth, Aaron. I'm with you, but I'm just thinking about if it was me and this happened, everything, the dream, every dollar that I probably have to my possession in my name is in my house and so forth. And so now I can go the legal route, which is, you said you can go other way. So how long does that take? And then what do I do between now and then? And I understand where this subdivision came from and how many times we've talked about it, how many times we've been up here and so forth. But it's the unwitting, too. We're not granting for a developer. We're not developing more lots. We're not giving him more money. He has it, and they'd have to go and legally get it. And I understand that. But when I'm looking at the couple and this gentleman here who is tied up and everything he has is tied into these lots, and you start looking at it. What about them? People come up here talking about the people. What about them? So that's just
The motion for the variance was made. It did not carry. So, that's the effect.
We can have further discussions. We can do that. Mr. Staff, one of the things obviously that we're concerned about is the requirement of the variance. And right now, technically, they do not meet the requirement. Mr. Dumas has offered what is easily considered a good compromise, and that's where I'm at. I agree with Mr. Dumas. I like his compromise, but I also see our level of where the variance says it doesn't qualify. Is there something that we can do that kind of meets in the middle with this? Mr. Murphy is making a very good point, and I feel for these people. There's got to be something that we can have that really compromises this.
Let me just say this to you, that when you look at, the buyer of the property, whether knowing or unknowing, I take into consideration the fact that most people who buy a home, really don't understand the planning and the zoning and the codes, and there's nobody out there that's really looking over it and advising them. I would encourage all of them to go get a lawyer and, to look at that.
Title attorney should have
figured
that out.
Well, that's exactly how they found out. The title attorney found it. That was sort of like at closing when the title attorney put out the information. So, I'm taking the liberty to really help out that individual homeowner who's trying to close on the house and may lose that mortgage or have the interest rate go up and get out of the realm of affordability, and realizing that, they're dealing with a developer that, God only knows what representations he may have made. Certainly made a lot of interesting representations here. So the
problem is,
but I hear you.
Bailing out the developer.
Yeah.
We're bailing out the developer when we do it. I feel bad for the people too, but you're bailing out the developer when you grant the variance.
Well, I'm
let me
putting that prohibition on the permitting.
Let me try and move this along a little bit.
The only thing that does concern me is, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Would maybe, as I understand it, there was basically a vote. The vote to approve the variance did not pass, but neither did the vote to deny the variance. So we're kind of at a stalemate here.
But a variance has to be granted. If a variance isn't granted,
I agree with that. Maybe the solution is
vote to deny.
that because we're at a stalemate here, we wait and put this on the agenda for next month, and in the interim, get an opinion from our council as to the legalities of the variance statute and the freedom that exists therein, to allay your fears or your concerns over whether or not, because I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you may grant the variance if you felt legally you could. And I don't think we've done anything by this vote to foreclose on the variance moving forward next month. Mr. Fournier.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make note that when this project first came up before the commission, 2 variances were granted previously on this project. Number 1 for the road section, and that was to allow them to proceed considering that the road was not built according to parish standards, and given the typical profile of the road, there are ditches on the side of the road. The road was built with concrete and that type of thing. I might add that the road, after it was tested, exceeded the parish standards in terms of road section. So that was one variance that was granted, and the other was that it could move forward with the anticipation that we'd get the JD, the jurisdictional determination, at a later date. So there were variances that were granted on this project before.
Right. Well, I would just say it seems like a stalemate. I mean, we can talk about this till we're blue in the face, but there's been 2 motions, neither of which passed. So we're back at square one.
I don't think you have to. I think you move for a variance. If the variance isn't granted, it's automatically denied. You don't have to have a motion to deny a variance.
But there was a motion made to deny it, so.
But you don't have to. I mean, it has no effect.
Well, but
the issue is either you grant the
argument,
variance or you don't.
But the same argument that you're making, that you have to deny this because it's self-created, you know, when we heard this petition not long ago, we granted 2 variances, and they were self-created by the same developer.
And they shouldn't have been granted. And of course, the last sentence says, evidence of variance granted under similar circumstances shall not be considered. So you're really not supposed to consider whether you granted one previously under similar circumstances as to whether you're going to grant another one on a self-created issue.
It's not a similar circumstance, it's the same project.
Well, perhaps what we can do to move this along, and I'm not trying to cut the discussion off, except for the fact that we've had 2 motions, neither of which passed, and they are inherently contradictory. Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Greg Swanson. I'm actually the builder. I purchased these 2 lots, and you're not, as what you said, you're not bailing the developer out. The developer's not here asking, I mean, he's asking for this variance because he's the developer. I'm the one that brought this originally to Lance and then to Eric, and then Mr. Julio got involved. When they heard, I purchased the lots, I turned in plans and specs to be approved by the parish. They weren't campsites. It's very evident they're homes. They're 4-bedroom, 2-bath, nice, higher-end homes. And they approved the permits, let me build the houses, did all the inspections, and then when we get to the closing, I'm told we can't give you a 911 address, so you're stuck. And I had, one was a custom home, and then I had to go to my clients and say, look, the plat wasn't signed, I'm not sure what to do, so I got to go to the parish. So they're sitting here, they've already put money down, they've got their mortgage, a young couple trying to start their lives, and they can't. It's not their fault. It's not my fault. So you're not bailing the developer out. We're here asking for the variance for somebody that bought a lot, and the parish gave us permits. We went through the whole process, and everything was approved, and COs were done, and now we're being told, hey, you can't sell the house we told you could build. That's where I'm at. I'm not here as a developer, and I didn't create the hardship. I'm stuck in the middle just as my clients are stuck in the middle. You know, just so they wouldn't lose their mortgage, I couldn't order finance it to them. I couldn't do anything because then they wouldn't be first-time home buyers. They're stuck. They've got money invested in a house they can't own. I've got money invested in 2 houses I can't sell. So that's how all this come about.
Does staff have any other recommendations on this? I mean, is there any other options that you have to offer?
Well, we've tossed around ideas. I'll turn it over to Eric, and he's got some ideas.
One of the things that you have to understand is that I've heard the term illegal subdivision. The lots were already subdivided, so those lots were already created. It was created as a campsite subdivision, and it was also created with a prohibition on accessing it from a street. It was addressed off of Severio Canal. When they came to get a permit, it was inadvertently addressed. Mr. Grady had built the road, and he had put a name on it, and they wanted to give the inspectors somewhere to be able to go to be able to find it. So that's how all of this started. They went through, they inspected the homes and all of that. And then when it came time for the closing, they couldn't address them off of the street. So really the only reason that they're here before you with this plat is to have the road go through the approval process so that they can get 911 addresses off of it. As was stated earlier, there were 2 variances granted for the street. The wetlands delineation, the jurisdictional determinations are requirements that were put into code several years ago. The parish doesn't really have any culpability. It's the property owner that is culpable if there are found to be wetlands on the properties that are not, that are destroyed or what have you. The commission, I mean, is allowed to grant variances, and as Mr. Swanson said, he's basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. You know, Grady has been made, Mr. Melanson has been made to come before this board and to go through the processes. You know, with the construction drawings, everything was approved with the exception of the jurisdictional determination has not been received yet. That's the only thing that they're waiting on. And as Mr. Swanson said, he's asking for the variance. I mean, in my opinion, it's within your power to grant it. Mr. Grady Melanson is the one that caused a hardship, and he's the one that's trying to get it cleared up for
Mr.
just
Murphy,
those 2 lots.
What is?
If I may, one more thing. You know, you say I'm going to build a developer out. On the contrary, what I'm going to do is prevent this from happening again until that jurisdictional letter comes in by actually imposing a condition that any other lot cannot get a building permit. The building department will not be able to make the same error again because the plats will be noted, no building permits allowed until that jurisdictional letter comes in and the parish planners recognize it and put it in the file. So if anything, we're going to secure this problem from happening again. I know it's unusual, and I understand what the code says, and I struggle between, what's the better solution? Continue to allow a potential problem to happen, or prevent that problem from happening again, and resolve the problem for 2 people who had nothing to do with what triggered this problem. They're injured parties. They're third parties that were not part of the problem.
Mr. Murphy, Mr. Dumas, were you finished?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Mr. Murphy, do we I know we've asked this before, and I know you kind of said that the Corps is doing it as they want. Do we have any type of time frame as to when the Corps is going to come with their JD?
The jurisdiction determination is usually about 5 months. So
Which was about 3 or 4 months ago, from what I understand.
Probably 2 months away from getting that in-house. But then you got to have, once we get that, then we can come back and get the rest of the lots cleared up. But 2 months to these homeowners are pretty substantial.
So they have a time frame that if something doesn't happen within, let's say, the next 30 days, they could face substantial financial hardships and then some.
Yep. And let me say this. Jurisdictional letter comes back, and on parts of the subdivision, they're wetlands, then the problem continues because they have to deal with those wetlands. So jurisdictional letter is just part 1.
Who would deal with that?
The developer and the property owner. The parish has no culpability.
The property owner. I mean, but what happened to the developer?
No, the developer.
The developer.
Did the violation.
Right.
The developer would get a violation, and he would have to deal with it.
An after-the-fact permit with the Corps.
Right.
And my next question would be, is there something, I understand what it says with variance, and I definitely agree with Commissioner Chassel on this, but is there a way that we could do any other type of contingency of this and not necessarily call it a variance? And I know it might just be verbiage, but if we can do an approval where it's not necessarily contingent upon a variance.
We went this route in discussions with legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the route that we decided in conversations with legal counsel, is the proper way to address
Is
this
to
issue.
have it as a variance.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I think our options at this point.
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
I'm going to replay Mr. Dumas's motion, if you wouldn't mind reading it, but I'm going to make a motion that we follow along with the motion that Mr. Dumas has said and ask that we have a revote on that. In that
All right,
case,
I think
can
we need first a motion for reconsideration of this matter.
Yes, can we?
Can you do that after the motions that we
Yeah.
voted on?
I'm gonna make a motion to do a
First is a
reconsideration.
motion to reconsider and revote on the original motions. Is that what your motion, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Schexnayder? Motion by Mr. Schexnayder on that. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Christie? Mr. Chasson?
No.
Mr. Schexnayder?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes for reconsideration and revote on this issue.
You want me to say the motion again?
Yes, sir. And I'm going to make the motion. He's going to spell it out.
All right, the motion is to approve with a condition to limit any future building permits being issued on any lot within the subdivision, and only two permits that may be issued is lots 9A and 10A until such time as a determination from the Army Corps of Engineers is received by the parish and reviewed and approved.
All right, motion by Mr. Schexnayder, as read by Mr. Dumas. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
Mr. Dumas? Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Mr. Chasson?
No.
Mr. Schexnayder?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 5-1, and that resolves it. So then, this will come up on the final plat approval at the end of the agenda.
No,
No,
we go
you
straight
can
to it.
consider it this point.
So the variance was requested, so we'll go to 9B2 for a consideration of approval of the final plat. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat with the same condition of approval, that only lots 9A and 10A can get a permit until such time as the jurisdictional letters been received by the parish, reviewed and approved by the parish.
Motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Roll call vote, Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Furman.
Yes.
Mr. Bishop.
Yes.
Mr. Christie.
Yes.
Mr. Chasson.
No.
Mr. Schexnayder.
Yes.
All right, the ayes have it by a vote of 5-1, so motion passes.
Thank you
It's
very
a lot
much.
of procedural enjoyment. All right, number 10 is the consent agenda. We have several affidavits of mortgage declaration. Item 10A is the affidavit of mortgage declaration for Gregory Lane Jones and Stephanie Ann Nickens Jones, Lot 3B, 8444 Pertwee Road, Santa Monica, Louisiana. 10B, is affidavit of mortgage declaration for Patrick Allen Turo and Monica Elliser Turo, lots A1 and B1, 45054 Spellman Wall Road, Prairieville. 10C is affidavit of mortgage declaration for Todd Turo, lot B1, 16434 Emery Ficklin Road in Prairieville. 10D is affidavit of mortgage declaration for John Hakam and Cindy Hakam, lot 40, 12185 Cypress Park Drive, Geismar, Louisiana. 10E is affidavit of mortgage declaration for James D. Como and Sandy R. Como, lot 43, 12163 Cypress Park Drive, Geismar, Louisiana. Item number 10F is affidavit of mortgage declaration for Brittany Collette, lot 44, 12157 Cypress Park Drive, Geismar, Louisiana. 10G is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Alfred Rosavio, lot 45, Cypress Ridge Subdivision, Geismar, Louisiana. Item 10H is an affidavit of mortgage declaration by William D. Walters, lot 46, 12143 Cypress Park Drive, Geismar, Louisiana. Item 10I is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Renee and Justin Zimmerman, lot 47, 12135 Cypress Park Drive, Geismar, Louisiana. Number 10J is affidavit of mortgage declaration for James Law Jr. and Gwen E. Law, Lot 48, 12129, Cypress Park Drive, Geismar, Louisiana. And 10K is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Josh J. Joffrion, Lot 49, 37395, Cypress Place Avenue, Geismar, Louisiana. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Furman, second by Mr. Christie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes as moved. Item number 11 is the public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. Item number 11A is the Earl J. Gotro property lots B1, B2, and B3. Willard J. Surveyors. I've had to read a lot here. Mr. Quitmont.
Good evening. Ask for planning commission approval on Earl J. Gotro property, family partition. The person receiving B2 would like to make a brief statement. That's okay.
Good evening. My name is Trish Maltese, and I am currently living in Prairieville with my family of 5. And we are currently selling our home due to the fact that I'm the only one, the sole provider for my family. My husband has been disabled since April, and he can no longer work. So I'm asking that y'all allow me to build a home on my parents' land behind their house.
Thank you, ma'am. Staff?
It meets all conditions of the code, and comments have been addressed.
All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this?
I have 3 that are for, but they wish to not speak.
Okay. Anybody else?
No.
All right. We'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, and/or motions?
Just a quick question. I see under comment number 2, there's something about a request dealing with the encroachment, servitude of passage, shed, and the existing mobile home. Do we have to make anything specific in our motion to address that, or is it already taken?
Not really. I just expressed to them to let the commission know, so everything was up, above board and up front. The notes that are required per the code to be put on a plat says that there shall be no encroachments that prohibit the servitude being used for the purpose at which it was intended. There is an existing driveway there. There is enough room for them to put a driveway to access those lots, but we just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of it before you voted to approve it. That's all.
That's really just considered an existing nonconformity.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I just didn't know
I'll
if
make
there
a
had to be
motion to
something
approve.
specific in the
Motion to
motion
approve.
with it.
Hold on. Okay. You done, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. A motion to approve by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Bishop. Beat you to it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 10B is the Darrell Guidry property lots 1E, 1A, and 1E, 1B by Earls and Associates. Mr. Quinmont, are you here for Mr. Falgood tonight?
Yes, I am.
The floor is yours.
All right, really just labeling comments and statement comments. All comments have been addressed.
Staff?
Yes, all comments have been addressed and meets code.
We'll open a public hearing on this. Has anyone signed up to speak on this matter?
No.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. Questions, comments, and/or a motion by the staff.
Move.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Mr. Schexnayder, second.
Second.
By Mr. Chasson, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 10C is the family partition of the Augustin Parent property, lots 2A1 and 2AB. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Mr. Parent. Sometimes my Yankee roots come out. Mr. Quimall, I can get that name out.
Yeah. Yeah, just a simple family partition, 1 lot into 2. All comments have been addressed.
Yes, all comments have been addressed and it meets the conditions of the code.
We'll open a public hearing on this. Ms. Stacy, anyone signed up to speak? No one has signed up to speak, so we'll close the public hearing on this. Motion to approve by Mr. Chasson, second by Mr. Furman. Oh, everybody's jumping up right now, getting tired. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, sir. All right. We're just getting started now. We're only an hour and a half in. Item number 12 is a public hearing to approve or deny the following preliminary plats. Item number 12A is Amalfi Cove by McGlynn Taylor. Mr. Berthelot, I see you are here tonight. You may
Yes.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I don't know if you need this. Eric, do I have to turn this on or anything? Yeah. I don't know if you can zoom it in or whatever. This is just the plat that we're proposing. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ross Berthelot, and I'm the developer of this project. I'm here tonight seeking approval for my preliminary plat for Amalfi Cove subdivision. I'm proposing a 105-lot residential subdivision on roughly 35 acres near the intersection of Roddy Road and Cannon Road. On this plat, Cannon's right here, and Roddy's right here. This is in Councilman Lambert's district. My proposal meets or exceeds all parish criteria for subdivision development, and the planning staff is recommending approval. I'd like to give you a brief background history of the property. The bulk of the property for this subdivision has been in the Powers family for decades, and about 4 years ago they decided they wanted to sell it. The Powers tract actually only has frontage on Cannon Road currently. It does not include this access to Roddy Road right here. And since Cannon is considered substandard by the parish, the family was having a hard time finding a suitable buyer. There simply aren't that many buyers who are willing to spend $1 million for a lot where only one home could be built. Over the years, I have looked at the property for development, as have several other potential buyers, but access was always the major hurdle. That is, until an adjacent tract became available on O'Neill Road in early 2018. O'Neill is in this direction. It runs north-south. This breathed new life into the project, and I once again became interested in it for development purposes. After taking a hard look at O'Neill Road, though, for potential access to the Powers tract, I decided it wouldn't be a feasible alternative as an entrance for a subdivision. Although the O'Neill property is properly zoned for subdivision, O'Neill Road retains a quaint and rural character that just didn't sit well with me as far as having a subdivision entrance is concerned. So I opted not to pursue any access there. The only other feasible way to access the property for development is off of Roddy Road, and so I contacted Mr. Simon Young about possibly purchasing a part of his property fronting Roddy Road so that I could gain access to the Powers tract. Mr. Young and his family are longtime residents and business owners on Roddy Road. He and I discussed his concerns with development, and we came to an agreement for him to sell a 2-acre tract near his daughter's home on Roddy Road, just north of his boat repair business, for my proposed subdivision development entrance. The layout that you see now is the result of a culmination of months of engineering, drainage calculations and studies, traffic studies, DOTD discussions, parish meetings, discussions with the councilman, etc., all at an upfront cost of over $45,000, just to get to this point today where we're able to present our plans for approval. I think it's important that the public understand just how many eyes are on a developer's plan from day one, with a singular goal of protecting public interest and welfare based on the laws and ordinances of the parish. If anyone opposes development, then they really oppose the current laws of the parish, not developers like me who comply with all laws and requirements of the parish proposing a new subdivision. What I'm proposing here tonight complies with all those parish ordinances for subdivision development. The property is zoned for residential development. There are no waivers sought other than the standard right-of-way waiver for sidewalks location. The drainage plan we are proposing actually improves or decreases the current water runoff from the property in the 10-year, 25-year, and 100-year rain events studied. What this means is the way the property naturally drains today is actually being improved once this subdivision is built. The drainage plan calls for a retention pond in the current low area of the property, which, in addition to controlling water runoff, will also provide water volume storage for backflow water from Black Bayou during these rain events studied. The traffic plan we are proposing improves or shortens traffic delays in the area by recommending installation of a DOTD-approved traffic signal at the intersection of Black Bayou Road and Roddy Road. I will pay for this signal, and it will be owned and maintained by DOTD, not the parish. This traffic light solution will take the existing conditions in AM and PM peak times at this intersection from levels of service in the range of Bs, Cs, and Ds
as shown on page 10 of the traffic study that you have, and improve them all to A's and B's under the build scenario, as shown on page 11. And yes, these traffic counts were all taken during the school year, as that is what the parish law requires. For those that think these drainage and traffic studies aren't worth the paper they are printed on, I challenge you to find any technical flaws or faults within these studies that were written by licensed engineers and reviewed by parish engineers. Facts trump opinions. I remind you that these studies comply with all laws and ordinances of the parish and have also been summarily reviewed by the planning staff, who recommends approval here tonight. Amalfi Cove subdivision will generate over $270,000 in traffic impact fees that will be designated for traffic improvements in Councilman Lambert's district. In addition, the construction of Amalfi Cove will generate countless jobs, give families new homes to purchase and raise their children in, and generate a new property tax base of over $23 million to the parish. I'm happy to take any questions you have about the project, and I have my traffic and drainage engineers here with me tonight to help me with any technical aspects of the questions you might have. I hope you will agree that Amalfi Cove will be a wonderful addition to the parish and will generate positive benefits for all of its citizens, and I ask for your approval here tonight. Thank you.
Staff?
Staff would only comment that we have worked with Mr. Berthelot in discussions with him. Staff does not make recommendations whether either for or denying a project, but it does meet the code as specified. Right.
I got a question for staff. He mentioned a standard waiver for sidewalks. I didn't see a application for a waiver anywhere.
There is, the typical parish street section has a sidewalk servitude 5 feet outside of the 50-foot right-of-way. What that does is it pushes the sidewalks closer to the homes and makes installing and maintaining utilities much more difficult. So we have allowed them to put the sidewalks within the right-of-way. There's a condition on the plat that says that the homeowners are responsible for the sidewalks there. And we wanted it to be known up front and above board. So over the last 6 or 8 months, we've required them to ask for a waiver from the typical street section to allow the sidewalks to be contained within the right-of-way, and that's what he's referring to.
Does that need to be advertised as part of the application?
No, I mean, he's asking for a waiver for in the preliminary plat process.
Any other questions, staff?
I've got well, not of staff, of the developer. I have a couple, but.
You want to do that after the public hearing or before the public hearing?
Either, as long as I get the opportunity to ask questions. I don't care when they
never
happen.
denied you here.
No, I know. I'm just.
Let's go ahead and open a public hearing so we can move on. Ms.
Okay.
Stacy.
Christopher Burke.
How many people have signed up to speak on this issue? If you could just raise your hand, if just one?
Two.
Two, okay. I'm surprised.
Hi, excuse me. My name's Christopher Burke. I live at 41390 Cannon Road. My property is immediately to the west of where the property meets Cannon Road. I just have a couple of questions for clarification. You know, I went to the parish website to review the zoning site requirements by district, which is Table B. Is that still valid? Because, you know, when I was looking at the preliminary plat, the lot sizes did not, like 90% of the lot sizes did not meet the minimum lot size requirements for that zone, nor did they meet the frontage, the minimum frontage.
The major subdivision, there's a major subdivision guideline table, it's Table C, that there are differences that are different than Table B.
Okay.
Table B is generally for individual lots in more rural areas.
Okay. The other concern I have on this is that there's a main drainage ditch, a parish drainage ditch that runs between my property and the property we're discussing now, and it drains the entire north side of Cannon Road between Roddy and O'Neill. I actually have a request into the parish right now to actually clean that drainage ditch because it silts in, gets debris. There's a culvert near Black Bayou that routinely plugs up. It's vital that access to be able to clean this ditch in the future is maintained. And the right-of-way is on the opposing property. It's to the east side of the ditch. I see there's a 25 to 30-foot servitude, but my concern is that our houses going to be put on there, people are going to be putting fences up, you know, putting things on their property. You know, when we need the ditch cleaned, they need to have access to be able to get backhoes, heavy equipment in there to go out and dig out the ditch. So, and then, you know, just in general, you know, of course, the traffic situation. You know, I'm going from one neighbor to 105 neighbors, okay? And the Roddy Road is routinely backed up every day with traffic, not just at Black Bayou, but at every other intersection along that road. So I know they're installing a traffic light there at Black Bayou, but what about the rest? I just don't see how there's going to be no impact to all of these other intersections. So.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
Thank y'all, commissioners, and Merry Christmas to y'all.
Merry Christmas to you too.
This area here, I live on Roddy, been living on Roddy for 60 years, so Mr. Burks, as far as the traffic right now, you take your life at hand getting on Roddy Road, you know, at 4:30 in the evening, especially turning left on it because you can't see traffic coming, you know, from the right side here. Traffic is a problem, drainage is a problem. That property drains from Cannon all the way to the Black Bayou Canal. And there's people that flood on the west side, north side, and east side of that property. Water got in homes and sandbagged most of them, you know, them three sides. The highest part is on Cannon Road, but Cannon Road has a non-standard, you know, substandard road where we can't have an entrance there. And the drainage is, the elevation, I don't know if y'all looked at the elevation, but a lot of fill has to be put in there. I think the elevation is right around, I think Mr. Berthlight told me 4, your drainage engineer.
The only part that's low.
Okay, okay. But quite a bit of fill has to be there, and I think there's about 7 acres of wetlands on that property also. So the drainage is a big issue, and it's a very sensitive area. I'm not really saying opposed of the project, but we need to be very careful with this. You know, I've seen some projects that got approved on paper, engineered, that the drainage is going to work if we do it this way, and it didn't work, you know. The subdivision itself didn't flood, but the outer perimeter of this subdivision did. And there's several I can, you know, point out to you on that. As far as the traffic, yes. I don't see where a red light warrants to get it from, you know, the impact of the study of the traffic. It's not going to speed it up any quicker. Like Mr. Burke said, you got 4-way stops every third of a mile down Roddy Road. So it's just going to back up. And my big concern too is once these 100 homes get here and the people are coming to get out of their subdivision, it's going to be bumper to bumper. Can't go left, can't go right until somebody lets them out. And you know who's going to get the call. What are we going to do? You know, because we developed it, you know. So if we can come up with some turn lanes or some more improvements on traffic, on the, you know, intersections, because I think we're going to be jammed up right there big time. So I want y'all to consider that, you know, if there's any other options. Because coming out right by the bridge, too, you're going to have a guardrail looking to your left when you come out of the subdivision. The guardrail for the bridge, because we're going to be widening Roddy Road, which doesn't help the capacity. It might make it safer. I think the red light's going to make it safer also. It's probably needed for safety. But it's not going to help to speed up traffic and get traffic through that intersection any quicker. So appreciate your consideration, and if there's ways to make this work, you know, somewhere different. But I see a lot of issues with it like it is. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for being here tonight. No one else? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. You're up first, Mr. Chestnut.
Thank you. Couple of things I'd like some questions about. One is looking at the last page of the document submitted to us by the engineering review agency. it notes, it says DOT, and look, the traffic counts are bad. There's C's, D's, this thing's, I think there was one or two F's that it hits when it builds out, and it looks like, just so everybody else knows what we've seen, that turn lanes and those types of things won't address the traffic issues enough in order to work, which is, it looks like from what the traffic engineer has determined is either the traffic signal, which I believe you've proposed, but it also says here that DOTD has not historically not preferred signals if there are other solutions such as roundabouts that would satisfy the improvement needs. I like roundabouts because roundabouts keep the traffic moving rather than stopping at a red light and you have to wait for the light to turn. At least with it alleviates somebody trying to turn into the subdivision isn't stopped backing up traffic. People trying to come out isn't stopped backing up traffic, and it helps keep that moving freely. Was there any thought considered as to doing a roundabout, and was there any impediment, or what's?
There may be some impediments with regards to pipelines right there, but Move Ascension has looked at this entire corridor. I'll get Nick Ferlito with a traffic engineering company to talk about it, but
they're going to be putting roundabouts at some of the intersections,
I believe,
right?
to the south, in 2 intersections to the south, but this one they didn't opt to propose a roundabout for it.
Because there wasn't 105 lots there at the time,
Yeah, no,
probably.
I think it also has to do with the traffic counts, but also some of the right-of-way maybe issues there.
Nick Ferlito with Neil Schaefer. I'll speak a little bit to that last comment you mentioned on the comments about the comment about DOTD traditionally prefers roundabouts over signals. If funding was not an issue and we're in a perfect world, I'd say that's probably true. But with their signal approval process, we have to go through a process that looks at a signal, but it also looks at other alternatives as well. But when we look at those alternatives, we have to weigh right-of-way impacts, construction cost, and all of those basically to get a benefit-cost ratio of the different alternatives. When you look at the benefit cost of a roundabout, the cost of those are extremely expensive, and so your benefit cost for a roundabout is going to be really low, especially for the improvements you're going to get. Especially when you look at the signal at this location, the signal provides some very good improvement. You know, we're going from C's and D's to A's and B's on all approaches. So when you start looking at the benefit cost for the signal, it's going to be much greater than the roundabout would be, and less right-of-way impacts.
But would the signal, when it's stopped, back up the traffic behind it at the other intersections? Typically, you get a red light, so then it backs up. It hits the red, everybody behind it is backed, whereas at least a roundabout keeps the traffic moving. And two, is there going to be, what type of signal are we talking about? Are we putting in an arrow? Because if you're not putting in an arrow, then you hit a solid green, somebody trying to make a left turn into the subdivision, and they're sitting there waiting. Maybe that one car gets to go. So while the signal envisioned putting 10, 15, 30 cars through, practically you only have one because somebody was trying to make a left turn and couldn't. And they gunned it right at the end of the signal, so you get one car through, and it doesn't really give you the benefit you're anticipating.
You know, based on the analysis we've done, you know, the signal's going to be a good distance from the subdivision entrance, and we don't anticipate that queuing to be an issue when the light turns red on Roddy Road.
The other question I had, and I don't know if this may be more for the developer or not, and I understand the issue with Cannon, because Cannon being substandard, we're not allowed to tie into it now. But from a connectivity and a safety standpoint, I know we like to have multiple entrances and exits. Would it be possible, rather than dead-ending it there, would you consider something like a condition or a stipulation that once Cannon is ever brought up to speed or to spec, that rather than it dead-ending at Cannon, it must tie into Cannon, number one, and then number two, as part of that, we be required that you install a sign at that dead end that notes, once, says something to the effect of this, reserved for future road connectivity, so that, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whenever it is, these and they go to tie it in because Cannon gets fixed. You don't have those 105 people coming before us saying, oh, well, we didn't know that when we bought it, it was one way in, one way out. We don't want it to connect. Everybody's on the knowledge base right up front that it's going to connect, because you've got a sign there notifying them
We,
that it's
uh,
going to do that.
I think we're given a 25-foot servitude there.
Yeah, there is a dedication of that right away for a future connection to Cannon Road. On the preliminary plat. You can see that where that,
So can
where
we
it borders
require,
there.
because what's going to happen is this. So we'll do that. I mean, look, we've been here when it's happened. What's going to happen is 5 years, 10 years, whenever it is, and Cannon's being done, and they're going to tie it in. We're going to have 105 people sitting out here saying, well, it was one way in when we bought it, and so we don't want it to connect because our nice little one way in, one way out is now going to have traffic, and we're going to have cars speeding through using it as a cut through, and it's going to be unsafe, and we're going to have crime. I mean, we've all sat through the meetings where that happens. So let's deal with that on the front end and require the developer to put up a sign there that says, this will connect to Cannon Road, so that everybody who buys a lot in that subdivision knows this will connect to Cannon Road, and when they go to connect it, we don't have 105 people saying, well, we didn't know. Well, you knew.
Right.
I'm happy to do that. That's not a problem with me. What I have asked a couple times in our meetings with the staff is, let me do a right-in, right-out only onto Cannon now, or let me gate it and have only exit traffic that turns right come out of the subdivision onto Cannon now. I mean, it's a kind of a waste of efforts to put a dead end right there, just waiting. Cannon Road is a road. It doesn't
But
have
I
to-
don't think
doesn't have to
Cannon's
be a
wide
main
enough right now to
intersection.
It's
take.
not wide enough for it.
Doesn't have to be the entrance. Just let people leave.
Doesn't matter if you exit onto it.
I mean,
it
if
falls
you
on-
want to exit onto Cannon, you're going to have to expand. You're going to have to widen it out to meet the.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to offer solutions.
No.
Right now, we're
Huh?
bottlenecked in one entrance.
Mr. Chairman, I might state that on the, if this is approved and the final plat comes before you, there will be a notation on the final plat that says that connection to Cannon Road will be done as soon as Cannon Road meets the standards.
Yeah, but it's got to be more than that, because you'll have 105 people saying, well, we didn't see the plat. When we bought it, it wasn't there, it wasn't connected. It's got to be a requirement
No, I
that there be a
understand the
big
signage,
sign at that dead end that says, this will connect to Cannon Road.
I'd like to get an idea from the engineer as to the sightline distances, if they've been looked at once the improvements are made on Roddy over the Black Bayou, that bridge, and the guardrails being widened. What's going to be the sight lines at that point of that exit?
That issue was, or concern was brought up early in the pre-application meeting. Since then, Rudy, they will be able to expand more if needed, if I don't answer this sufficiently. They've contacted Move Ascension. They've contacted the engineers that have done a preliminary design of the bridge. They've looked at AASHTO criteria regarding site distances, and then at this time, based on those results, it shows that this proposed road at this location, even considering a widening of the bridge, proposed guardrail, will have sufficient site distance. And you'll see there's a
Do we know, what is the definition of sufficient sight distance?
Well, you got a couple of factors. One is speed of the car, because also if a car is faster, it's coming, you need more time, a clear sight when you're sitting in a car. Nick's going to catch me if I say this wrong, but I believe there's a certain national standard for height as a person that typically sits in a car, which is the lower you are, that's harder it is to see than if you had a bigger truck. And how close would you actually nudge your car up to the side of the road, needing to look left, looking right, and be able to make a decision, is it safe for me to pull out? So the faster the roadway is, the more distance you need to be able to see that. And there's the horizontal, we call horizontal, make sure there's not trees in the way. And sometimes there's nothing in your way, but there's a hump in the road. We call that vertical, which in flat Ascension Parish is hard to find those situations, but those are the other type of sight distance you're looking out for. So there's not one set number. There's a table, national table. You look at these criteria as your speed, stop distance, or you're trying to merge. There's a lot of different scenarios. The engineer looked at those, what makes sense for this project. Based on the information provided at this time, we agreed, yes, this looks acceptable, but we acknowledge in our review letter, when we get detailed design, should we go that far, in construction plans, it will be reevaluated at that time when it's a more finite design when the construction plan process.
I mean, I think that's a concern that I have and being somebody who lives in a neighborhood where there's limited sight distance, which is I'm assuming it's adequate because this neighborhood was built. I worry about somebody coming out there and maybe trying to edge in to make a left turn onto Roddy into traffic and not seeing a car coming, you know, from the left that's got a clear open road because of the red light, you know, or whatever up at Black Bayou and Roddy. So, I mean, I can't argue with the tables, the national tables, because I assume that's all standardized, but that's certainly a concern.
That is correct.
So what happens, just curious, say we approve it, and then during this construction phase, it's determined that the site distance actually is not adequate. Then where do you go from there?
And this is no different. A lot of projects, like some projects say, we have to fill the property, we're going to have floodplain fill mitigation, or we have to go through the wetlands permitting process. A lot of things with construction plans, if it doesn't work out, I think that's one of the reasons why we have in the ordinance, it says if a project hasn't proceeded a certain time in 6 months, that's usually, sometimes that's just issues with the design. And then they would be coming back and saying, this is my challenge that I have right now. So if it doesn't happen, then they really, that's part of the risk of going to the development business, is this is a preliminary plan, and you have to go through a detailed design process, more detailed survey, more hydraulic pipe analysis. They have to run the numbers economically, make sure it makes sense. They have to get, you know, the necessary permits. They could, for example, if DEQ doesn't give them the permit, then they're sort of just stuck with a project. There's a lot of factors than just the site distance that if it doesn't work out in construction plan process, they're sort of dead with the project. And then if it's really dead, then that's one of the reasons why you could rescind a preliminary plat approval, because nothing, obviously the project's dead for a reason.
Has DOTD already said they're going to give you the permit for the light, or is
We
that
had a
something you
meeting
have
with
to
them
go
last week with Jerome and Eric and a few other members, and do you want to summarize it?
Yeah, basically, as Ross said, we did meet with DOTD last week concerning this issue, and they're looking at, on the mid-level stages of DOTD, it has to go to higher ranks in order to get approval, and as soon as this proposal is brought to them, they're going to work through the DOTD process. It has not been approved now, but it has to go through that process.
So the traffic impact study requires a light being installed at that intersection?
It requires an improvement.
Well, the way that the wording, and we had this discussion too the other day, the wording may need to be tweaked long-term for Ascension Parish, but if my subdivision development deteriorates the road condition I have to propose something that would bring it back at least to where it was or better. The traffic light brings it better.
So, but I think one of the issues, and I just don't have a lot of confidence in DOTD. Okay, I'll be honest with you. And I'm aware that y'all met with DOTD at the mid-level, which is, I don't know how much credibility that has, not from your standpoint, from DOTD standpoint, say, oh, well, this light's going to get approved. So the proposal is to do a light, but since Black Bayou is a state highway, that's going to have to be eventually approved and permitted by DOTD. And if they don't approve and permit it, then we're stuck, or he's stuck.
Well,
You're
not
stuck.
necessarily.
Mr. Chair.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I mean.
I'll let him go first.
Ultimately, he's responsible to mitigate that downtime in service. So that can be done per our code, either with a roundabout or other type of mitigation factors.
Well, it's going to have to be permitted and approved by DOTD.
Correct.
Because it is a state highway. So whether they say, well, we don't want a traffic light there, we want a roundabout,
And they
that's
could
what
force
you're
them
going to
to
be
do a
stuck.
roundabout.
Mr. Dumas, you have a point.
Yeah, but on paragraph 2 of the traffic analysis, it says the proposed solution for a drop in LOS at the intersection of Black Bayou and Roddy Road is to implement north and southbound right-hand turn lanes. So you're proposing to put the traffic light in lieu of the turn lanes?
Because the the two right turn lanes don't improve levels at every northbound, southbound, eastbound, westbound. It only fixes it in two directions. And so for me to effectively improve the levels of service at all four ways, a traffic light is the way to go.
The turn lanes don't improve everything enough to meet the requirement. As I understand it, the only thing they can do to improve enough of the traffic to meet the requirements is either the signal or a roundabout would be the only two options, right?
We didn't look at a roundabout, so.
Okay, so we don't
I
even know
assume
if a
it would
roundabout.
work, but we didn't actually look at it.
I guess maybe I inferred that based on that last sentence of the proposal. Well,
I mean, no,
there-
just-
We're finished with the public hearing?
Huh?
The public hearing? We're ready for the public hearing?
We already did the
We already did the public
Okay.
hearing. Public
Why
hearing's
is it so long?
closed.
Okay.
We're in the question, comment, and/or motion standpoint.
I mean, because the
Whenever
problem
you're
we're
ready.
going to have is this, right?
And/or motion.
Well, because it's going to be the same thing we dealt with at the beginning of the meeting. You make the motion, you have to get the permit to get the light, because that's what's required. TD doesn't approve the light, and then either they're back here asking for a variance or something else, because we approved something.
Well, I
mean,
think
that-
I may
that-
have a
that
solution
becomes
to
a
that.
problem.
Mr. Dumas may have a motion. It sounds like he has
Okay.
a motion.
What's your proposed solution?
So here goes. I've got a handful of conditions that'll go with this, my motion to approve the subdivision, because it does technically meet the code. However, there are some impacts. I'm concerned of what this sightline is going to be on Roddy Road, and I'm concerned about the traffic on Roddy Road and having only one entrance onto Roddy Road. So I'm going to start by making a motion to approve this subdivision, subject to the following: that the parish will not issue a permit for the development of this subdivision until such time as it, A, has received in hand a traffic, the appropriate warrant and approvals from DOTD for the construction of the traffic light at Roddy Road and Black Bayou. Okay? So no permits, no construction until that traffic light is in our hands. Okay? That the construction of that traffic light be concurrent with the development of this project. Project cannot be approved until that light is fully functional. Second, that Capri Drive connect to Cannon Road. I would ask that the developer be responsible to widen the asphalt on Cannon Road to parish standards from O'Neill to Roddy Road, and that the parish enter in whatever agreements it needs to give it impact fee credits for the cost associated with the widening of Cannon Road. That's my motion.
Comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Well, we have officially a motion on the floor.
Okay, but comment about the motion. Mr. Dumas, what concerns me, though, is if we do that and we know Cannon is substandard, by them accessing it, then that does trigger as they can't build, period, on a substandard road.
They have to widen Cannon as part of the development.
Right, I understand that, but the code does say that if you're not up to that standard, then you can't build it. And we have done that in the past, like with Jamestown, but we have kind of had a lot of issues with that.
Well, no, they haven't developed because they got to get that road finished. And I think in this case, he's going to have to widen the road and get that traffic light before he develops the subdivision as part of that development.
What do
concurrent
you
with it.
propose the transition from past O'Neill look like?
I think that the rational nexus is between those two and not necessarily beyond those. And so I can only go so far and impose so much on you.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. Any credits given under the traffic impact fee program has to involve a project, a road that's within the traffic impact fee program, and currently Cannon Road is not, right? So they would not be eligible for traffic impact fee credits.
I'm just suggesting that you go to the parish and try to figure out how to do that. I'm not saying that we will give them credit. I don't
So
have the
as
authority
I
to do
understand, the motion that is on the floor is the approval subject to first the traffic light being installed and nothing happening until it happens, but also Cannon Road being widened
between O'Neill
and Roddy, and nothing happening until that
has to be done concurrently.
Yeah. All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Bishop. We can have further discussion on this.
Yes,
I
I'd
mean,
like,
Is the developer even willing to do that before you impose a condition on him?
I
mean,
think it's
he's not
highly
willing to do-
problematic. I think I'm not the first person to try to propose a development on this property, and I think Cannon Road, anything widening, the ditches, it's highly problematic. And then to just want to do it for one 500-yard stretch and not address the rest of it.
Well,
is-
actually, the distance, I looked it up on the map, the distance between O'Neill and Roddy, I think it's 2,500 feet roughly, 2,500 feet roughly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you do have an avenue where you can go to the parish and go to and apply for, and hopefully they can assist you by giving you your impact fee credits.
But I'm trying to follow the
I would encourage the
current
parish to
ordinances.
undertake that, but I certainly don't have the authority to do that.
I understand. I'm trying to follow the current ordinances, and they say don't access Cannon, so I've come up with a solution whereby I access Roddy, and that's what I'm presenting here tonight.
I think that the access to Roddy may end up problematic in the future. I think the traffic on Roddy is pretty significant, and I think 105 homes there without a secondary access is poor planning on the parish's side, and I think the community there would be adversely impacted. And the only way that I can get you that secondary access is if you widen the road and then hope to seek impact fee credit from the parish. I think those conditions are the only way to mitigate the impact for developing of this property, and it's reasonable.
And with all due respect, our traffic study says otherwise and shows that as proposed with the traffic light that we're proposing will be all A's and B's at that intersection. If I might
But that's the
offer.
intersection that's northeast of your property.
Correct.
But,
That's
you
the
know,
only
there's
one that
another
was
intersection
adversely.
southeast of your property.
And that was the only one that was adversely impacted as a
If
result.
hypothetically, Sean, if there would have been an exit proposed onto O'Neill Lane, where would the traffic impact study have looked? It would have gone down O'Neill Lane?
What's, Cannon Road?
Cannon Road, yes, I'm sorry.
That's
it'd be
hard.
Roddy at Cannon.
I guess the other option would be, we could always say, under the traffic impact study, it's an area experiencing excessive traffic congestion and has high volumes on surrounding roads affecting access to the proposed development and require a threshold 3 traffic study.
All right, well.
Would be an alternative.
For the current, we have a motion and that's been seconded on the floor. So we'll go for a vote unless I hear a substitute motion. So all in favor of the motion that has been seconded by Mr. Dumas?
No, Mr. Bishop.
Made by Mr. Dumas, seconded by Mr. Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Nay.
We do a roll call vote. Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
No.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Christie? Mr. Chasson?
No.
Mr. Schexnayder?
No.
All right, the motion fails. Do we have a substitute or alternative motion on this?
I do have one question.
Okay.
For Roddy Road, and up and down Roddy Road in Black Bayou, is that part of the Move Ascension program? In other words, do we have some scheduled improvements along Roddy Road that's, because I know that there's some surveying that's already taken place. Are any of these improvements possibly going to benefit them on this?
Very likely. I think Nick knows the Move Ascension a lot better than I do, so I'll let him address that.
And the two parts I really have specifically referring to are, up and down Cannon Road. We all know how substandard it is, and the direct intersection of Cannon at Roddy.
From the plans I've seen, all the improvements are along Roddy Road itself. They're doing lane widening and adding shoulders, more of a safety widening than a capacity improvement. But as far as the side streets, there's no improvements on Cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the roundabouts? Are they south?
Yeah, one's at Church Point. I'm not sure where the other one
is. Maybe 621. Sure.
And then, of course, the problem is how long is that going to take? Because some of the safety widening, like on Henry, was supposed to be finished this month, and they haven't even designed it yet. So, same problem with everything. How long is it going to take to get the, we say we're going to do something. How long does it take to actually get it done?
Well, I guess my position is that if we can encourage a developer to do it, and we can leverage our impact fees to the max, because we certainly can't rely on DOTD. I just, you know.
Again, my problem again, though, gets to, so we approve it with the contingencies, he's got to do that, and then when he can't get DOTD to issue the light, or the parish won't give him the impact fee credit for widening Cannon, and then he comes back, well, look, we need the variance now because you approved it and you gave, I know, but
remember,
but we always wind up granting them.
Yeah,
We say
but
no, but
remember-
then we wind up granting them anyway.
I don't think
Yeah,
we've
but
granted any
Commissioner-
variance that we subsequent, of any condition that we placed on any property.
Remember, in
Thus
this,
far.
yeah, in this case.
The first
you
one's
know,
been up tonight earlier.
Unlike,
And I didn't hear a warm welcome for that variance, but.
Unlike prior developments that have come here for a variance or are trying to get a variance, you know, they were able to develop before resolving the issue with DOTD. Okay? In this case, in my condition, we're withholding the parish permit to construct until the DOTD matter is resolved. I want to know that DOTD's matter is resolved before I go ahead and say, yeah, start developing. Because I don't want to be in a position of a variance ever again.
And Mr. Dumas, we agree with you. If that were the only condition, I'm fine with that. The Cannon Road is going to be a problematic.
And that's what that's one
But
thing
I
I'm
look at
curious
the whole
You can make a
geography of
substitute
the
motion
area,
if
and
you
that
like.
concerns me. And
Is-
so
is-
I
is
don't have a
that-
solution for you.
Yes, sir. And that's kind of what concerns me is that ultimately, is that an untenable solution? And if we impose an untenable solution, then that kind of, it nixes it, yeah.
It does.
Well, then, it's just, you know, if you have another alternative, a motion, mine failed, or at least it's, yeah, it failed, so you know.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, looking at the Move Ascension program, just to give you an indication of some of the projects there, Rodney Road widening from LA 935 to 621. There's a Rodney Road widening project from Airline Highway to 935. There's a Roddy widening from 933 to 931. And there is another Roddy Road roundabout at 931, and those are the Move Ascension programs.
And that's all safety widening, that's, like they said, it's not
Yes.
capacity, it's not
Yes.
adding capacity, so it's not
Right.
fixing the traffic issue.
That's
Well,
exactly
the,
right.
obviously, the roundabout at 931,
But that's three things down.
yeah, that's way, it's.
Yeah,
right.
Okay. Do you have a substitute motion, or a different motion you want to make?
I'll just make a motion to deny, and then let them come back once they get these issues ironed out.
We got a motion to deny by Mr. Chesson, second. Second by Mr. Christie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Okay,
All right, roll call vote.
okay.
Mr. Dumas, Mr. Furman?
Aye.
Mr., oh, hold on, I'm gonna have to keep track of this. Mr. Bishop?
We have to state our cases.
Okay.
Wait, now,
The current motion is to
Deny.
deny the
Nay.
preliminary
Nay.
plat. So Mr. Dumas voted no on denial. Mr. Furman voted yes on denial.
And he must state his case.
State your case for denial, please, Mr. Furman.
No, my case, you.
No, the denial for,
Mr. Furman.
Mr. Furman for denial of the preliminary plat.
The traffic issues is my main reason.
All right. Mr. Bishop? On denial, yes or no, on
No,
denial?
we're voting in
I'm
opposition of the.
Right.
of motion.
The motion
I'm
is.
voting to,
Hold on. The motion is to deny the preliminary plat. You voted against that motion.
yes.
Mr. Furman voted in favor of the motion. Mr. Bishop?
So I'm in favor of the motion.
You're-
I want to approve the
So you-
project because
you're
it meets
against-
all
You're-
criteria.
You are against the motion to
Yes.
deny. Thank you. Mr. Christie? Mr. Chasson?
I think you have to state.
Oh,
since
state
you're
your reason,
Voting for
please.
denial, you have to
Yes,
state.
because I don't feel that the roads, is gonna meet the right criteria, and it will create problems.
Mr. Chasson?
Yes.
You made the motion.
Yes, I made the motion, yes. I don't feel like the proposed solution, without knowing what DOTD is gonna do, is gonna fix the traffic issue. I also have a problem with not connecting to Cannon, and Cannon is substandard, so we can't allow a connection. The plan, the plan and development code favors connectivity, road connectivity from a safety issue. you have to have the connectivity, and we can't connect until that road is fixed. So for those reasons, I would deny.
Mr. Chexon.
Approve to deny.
I would approve to deny based on the same conditions that Ms. Chesson is saying, specifically the traffic light. I don't know if we're going to necessarily have that in hand, and the stub out to Cannon with that area being substandard roads, and for secondary connectivity.
The chair would vote, or the chair votes against denial, so nay on that. So the motion to deny carries 4-3, so.
Okay, I respect that, but everything that I was required to do passed. What would you like me to do next?
I think this is a question for you. You made the
The
motion.
traffic study is all A's and B's based on what we're proposing.
Can you get the DOTD first and then come with the DOTD? I mean, can we, is there
That's
a
putting the
way to
cart
get it?
before the horse. Can we just have an approval based on DOTD? And, I mean, if I don't get DOTD, I can't do anything.
He's got to have a form of approval from the parish to go to DOTD. The door's closed until he's got an approval.
Yeah, they can appeal to the council.
Yeah, I might suggest that is the solution. Basically, there's an appeal process, and the appeal goes directly to the
parish
appeals
council.
board, which is the parish council.
Correct.
We'll see it back here in 60
Yeah,
days.
they'll
I'm
just
sure.
kick it back next month.
Yeah, they'll punt. Or as,
Right.
no offense,
I wish we
Mr.
could
Lambert.
take care of it tonight, because that's what's going to happen.
I would add this too, if Roddy Road was a capacity issue, I would expect that Move Ascension would be widening that road for capacity, not just for safety.
All right, moving on to item number 12B, cottages at Savannah Road, major revision, quality engineering and surveying LLC, Mr. Murphy. We are a talkative bunch tonight.
It would have ultimately shut down. That's what
My concern was, then they,
an offset. The developer, that would have been the sticker on it.
Anyway, I'm sorry, we'll move ahead. We'll talk about that later.
My name is Derek Murphy of Quality Engineering and Surveying, representing the cottages at Savannah Row. This is a 52-lot subdivision off of Glen Williams Road near Joe Severio Road that this commission previously approved. This commission previously approved this preliminary plat with several variances, including private streets, pavers, and so forth. We're coming back before you tonight.
Not another
asking-
variance.
What's that?
Not another variance.
No, to eliminate the variances and go back to a standard.
A variance to variance?
Yes. So that's what the major revision is for. This is a standard subdivision that meets all codes with the same intent of what it had. We went back to the, standard street sections. We're staying out of the floodplain on this particular one and redistributing the traffic. We had the traffic engineer look back over everything, present a new letter in support of what we were doing, did not affect the overall traffic patterns. We looked at the drainage impact study, and obviously the drainage impact study shows that it is improvement without the culverts in the existing ditch going to Henderson Bayou. We had construction plans are actually approved on the original proposal. We're coming back tonight asking for this revision. We hope to have approval. Thank you.
Staff?
Yeah, the staff has met, and I think in your packet you have a copy of the preliminary plat as it was initially approved. And you can see the road going through there through. And as Mr. Murphy indicated, that there are the two large dash lines where the culverts that they were going to put through that particular, through Henderson Bayou at that place. And they were going to connect the road from one end to the other. They have now gone forward, and you'll see the revised plat in your package. And there's a stub out to Ballpark Road, and I need to count the 6, and well, there are about 15 lots that stub out there. And then the others are a cul-de-sac that's going to gain access to Glen Williams Boulevard. I've had some conversations with a couple of property owners that are on Glenn Williams. Once we indicated the change, they seem to be satisfied, but I'm sure that there's some people tonight who want to speak about this, all right?
Well, what this also does from a traffic standpoint is keeping through traffic and so forth, so it's keeping the smaller neighborhoods, keeping those intact, and then not affecting that bayou, not affecting Henderson Bayou or the tributary to Henderson Bayou.
All right, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this, Ms. Stacy.
Travis Joyner.
How many people are here to speak on this?
First, see what they can get out.
7.
How y'all doing
Mr.
tonight?
Joyner.
My name is Travis Joyner. I reside off of Merritt Evans. I'm the board of Merritt Evans. First thing is, when y'all approved this first plat that we went through, there was a road going all the way through. Death traps. I mean, you got one way in, one way out on one way, one way in, one way out on another road. Neither road, I don't care what any traffic study says, you ain't turned them in yet. Neither one of these roads can accommodate the traffic, especially Ballpark. Did any of y'all been down Ballpark through football season? You can't get out of there within 30 minutes. You can't do it, not at 6 o'clock, not at 7 o'clock. So how is the traffic gonna be alleviated with this little bitty old subdivision with 15 houses on Ballpark? Glenn Williams, you can't turn 2 full-size trucks in or out at the same time. So how is that, again, alleviating the traffic problem? Well, another concern is, how high are you gonna build up this neighborhood? You going 2 feet up, 4 foot up, 6 foot up? Nobody knows. I mean, you got 16-foot elevation already. Now you're saying the building height is 20 foot. So you're gonna build up 4 foot, which is basically at the bottom of a mobile home. What about the properties on both sides of that neighborhood? No matter what your drainage is, that bayou backs up off of after a 2-hour rain. It's completely full. What you gonna do with the ponds? If the bayou's full, where's these ponds gonna drain to? There is no relief to drainage in that bayou. So, I mean, are you thinking about the prior residents when you approved this neighborhood with one way out on one side, one way out on another side, with 2 ponds directly touching pretty close to the bayou? How is that going to alleviate the drainage? How is it going to alleviate the traffic? Are you going to widen Ballpark? What about Glenn Williams? There's really no solution to either one of them studies that y'all say y'all have got. So I say no on this just as well as everybody else on Glenn Williams and Merritt Evans. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
John McManus.
I have to agree with the gentleman prior here, for the simple reason I was at Ballpark Road for many years. First of all, I live on Glenn Williams, and I challenge anybody just to get 2 full-size vehicles in there at the same time. Plus, we're also adding another, 52, I think it's changed now, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but there's 16 homes on a one-way street, on a small dead-end street, that we're adding all of these homes and things into there. What happened to the property that adjoined out to Joseph area? We've been talking about substandard roads, just like Cannon and all these things. We listen to all this all night. This is what we don't want to have, is more substandard things. And who's going to fix that in the end? If the parish approves that now, then the parish is going to be stuck with all those improvements, and that's going to be more tax dollars out the way later on. We've had issues on Glenn Williams already with buses, turnarounds, and everything now, because we sold 1 or 2 lots more on that dead-end street, and we've had a few more neighbors moved in, which eliminated some more bus turnarounds. So now there's only 1. If you look at the dogleg in Glenn Williams right there, a bus can hardly make that turn, period, if people coming from either direction can stop prior to the bus if they can see around the blind curve. Now we're going to add 35 or 40 more vehicles coming out in that same blind curve. And then once they exit out of Glenn Williams going toward Joseph Area right now, there's not enough room to put more than 5 or 6 cars back to back from that stop side in. So what is that going to do with the rest of our traffic situation, because now they're funneling into our one-way subdivision here? So My question to you, what happened to all the property and the access at one time that this was sold, I think, as a full zone where it was, a full plot where it came out on Joseph area? So I think we're doing nothing but just funnel it down to absolutely zero. I suffered the same thing on Highway 44, owning a business by Wallace Acres, with the same thing that happened with that subdivision, which ended up selling because in the flood of 2016, nothing was ever supposed to happen. I ended up with water almost in my building that hadn't even come close because of drainage issues from a subdivision. So I think we need to re-examine this a little bit more before we just go out and say yes and go. Not just for the points of one thing, but many. I think public safety more than anything. Drainage, of course, is going to be affected. We saw what came up with the flood of 2016, and like we're also talking, every rain, same problem. So I think we need to address that a little bit more. And like I say, out of Glen Williams, out of 16 of us, over half are here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Harold McManus.
Good evening. I'm Carol McManus. I live on Glen Williams Road also. The thing I want to talk about is the entrance that they're proposed to come in down Glen Williams. You can't get two cars in and out at the same time. All our neighbors know that, so if I see someone coming into the neighborhood, I back my car up so they can pull in off of Joseph area because that's a very busy road. Will all these new people moving in, you're probably going to have each household have at least two cars, so that's over 100 cars coming in and out of an area that can't even hardly accommodate, 16 or 20 cars a day. A lot of us have boats, campers and stuff. How will you ever be able to get out onto Roddy Road or back into your home when the access is so narrow? I don't think any studies, I know no studies have been done on it, because if they have, there hasn't been someone pulling in and out at the same exact time. Also, there is another access, and the lot just went up for sale this week. I don't understand why they wouldn't have the access come off of Joseph area, rather come through the middle of our neighborhood. I would think the two people at the very beginning of the neighborhood, you'd have to widen the entrance, taking away half of their front yard. The one house already sits almost right on Merida or Joseph area and Glen Williams, so it would be very unfair to those property owners. You were talking about substandard roads. Merritt Evans is a very substandard road. There's been a lot of deaths on that road over the years, and just more traffic. I think there could be a better solution. I do think that it needs to be looked at a little bit more in depth before we just approve it and say yes. Another thing I want to bring to your attention, a lot of neighborhoods have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. Ours is 15, and I think all my neighbors are very proud to have a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. We want to keep our children safe, and we don't want to have a new neighborhood change our speed limit in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jason Soul.
Come forward, please.
Neighborhood should have never been thought of because no one can turn in and out of Glen Williams. I live on that street. I was not here for the other meeting because I was at work. This one is a bad idea from the get-go. One way in and one way out. You can't even turn two vehicles on that road at the same time, like everyone else has said. How is several more houses going to affect that? Much less the drainage problem, too. I mean, I don't think this neighborhood should even happen. What are y'all going to do about the drainage? Because the ditches fill up every time it rains. I have 2 of them that border my house. I'm going to have 5 houses on the backside of my house. I mean, I don't know what else to tell y'all, but it shouldn't be happening. And every neighbor I've talked to feels the exact same way on Glenn Williams. Not a single one of them want this neighborhood. I don't care what anyone else says.
Michael Semino.
Good evening. I'm Michael Semino. I live on Glenn Williams Road. Just going to reiterate what everybody else said. Our road is not up to standard to supply the extra amount of traffic. I keep hearing that they did a traffic study. They did a traffic study. I don't know how they measured this road. I don't know if it's from edge to blacktop, line to line. Not quite sure. But I'm an electrician by trade. I can read a tape measure, and I went measure it. And we have a spot around the curve that's right at 16 foot. Like everybody else said, you can't pass two vehicles at the same time. I've been there 14 years. And I originally, when we talked about this last time, said that I did not mind the growth. I didn't want it to come through our neighborhood. I was told, DOTD said, oh, we had to do it that way. That's hard for me to believe when you turn around, you sell that piece of property to build a house. Because that exact property that everybody's talking about that should be the entrance got sold. Now they're going to build a house there. I disagree with it. I vote no on it. Thank you for your time.
Do we know, is Glenn Williams not wide enough?
Very narrow, extremely narrow road.
They didn't do a study, but.
Do we have dimensions on that?
I don't have the dimensions in front of me.
It's only a 30-foot right-of-way.
I don't have the dimensions in front of you. The parish requirement is 18 feet in pavement width, right?
But the gentleman said he measured it in the curve and it's like 16 feet.
Yeah. Well, the entrance, if you see on the plat, the entrance is before the curve.
But that's the same issue we ran into with Jamestown. It's the road. It's not the entrance site. It's whether the road is wide enough.
That's the question.
I mean,
All right,
and
let's, I just wanted to get that point clear, if we had any data on that. Let's continue with the public hearing, please.
Kim,
probably 3 to 5 months, that when they went back on that study, whether the road was repaved or even supposed to be a paved road, that this area that never even got put in by Terry. And it might give you some background to that.
Okay. Let's move on with the public hearing to get.
Kim Christie.
My question is about the traffic study. I pulled the packet and there's no traffic study. And I need some clarification that this is a major revision and there should be a traffic study. And I don't understand why there's no traffic study in the packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christie.
Samuel Keston.
Gentlemen, thank y'all. I'm Caston. I too live on Glenn Williams. I'm not going to, reiterate what everyone has said. The road is narrow. It's no fun. I pull a trailer for most days of my life. I'm now in the oil field hand. I pull a trailer a lot. There are days that I have to sit outside on Joe Severio for several minutes with 16 residents that currently live there. With 38 homes, in my mind, that's roughly, if everybody has 2 cars and doesn't have a teenage child, that's 76 vehicles. We have an issue with 32 to 35 vehicles getting in and out of the subdivision. I'm not opposed to folks building subdivisions. It's their land. They should be able to do with it what they would like. We're just asking that, to please make it right in doing it. Now, in their subdivision, their subdivision road is 50 feet wide, I believe, if I looked at that map correctly. We're just asking, you know, if you're going to use our road, or I am asking also, if you're going to use our road, why is your subdivision, you know, should it be privy to a 50-foot road when ours is 18? And you're adding more traffic to our already, you know, small subpar road. And I'll be quiet. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Close the public hearing on this. Any questions by the commission?
I got quite a few. One thing I want to say, and this is just kind of a clarification from some of the questions that the residents had. Ms. Christie, the reason we don't have a traffic study is that this was also done before our current traffic study ordinance, and so at the time, this did not trigger anything further due to the house count and everything. So even though it's a major revision, it does not re-trigger another traffic study. Also, well, that's not, the major revision does not trigger a new traffic study. Another thing is that I just want the residents to, just to be aware, this is a change. The development as it stands has a preliminary approval, so they can do what they've already been approved right now, whether we approve or deny this. They're asking for a change, and that's what they are asking for. So we are basically voting on whether to give them this change or not. And I just want y'all to be aware of that. And that was my 2 comments on that.
Matt, Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Yes. Well, does
The-
anybody else have any
Yeah, I've
questions?
got a couple of questions, and you might be able to help, Derek. So was a new traffic study done or not?
We were asked by the parish to look at the traffic study and how this basically, having 2 entrances affects the layout. So we do have a letter from Victoria, which is the traffic engineer, that analyzed the redistribution. In other words, what they had was originally they had 50-50 going both ways.
Because you'd had traffic going
Correct.
both ways. Now you're funneling one part only one way
Right,
and
so
one
what he
other.
did was he took 75% of the trips, basically, which is based on the lot count, towards Glen Williams, and the other part towards Ballpark, and he did analysis on those intersections that were asked, and it says right here that neither, no turn lanes were warranted anywhere because of the counts.
Under the
The new-
current?
Under the new.
Oh.
Under the new, or, so it was, that was.
He
on-
did a study. I need to make sure, when we came back before y'all before, we met all codes with the exception of those 3 waivers that we discussed earlier. We had a traffic study. This traffic study was triggered. They looked at everything that was asked for us according to your code. When we went back with this revision, the ERA and the parish asked, because of you redistributing the traffic, we want just a supplemental letter to the original traffic study saying what the redistribution does. Does it warrant turn lanes or not? We have that letter. We looked at it. We also looked at the drainage.
That wasn't given to us, so we kind of, yeah, I mean, and that's what, I was operating under the sense of the major revision did not trigger anything else, and it doesn't have anything like that in our packet, so I'm just kind of curious. I guess I was operating under the wrong assumptions in that sense.
How's this thing work?
And maybe while you're looking at that, my second concern is the connectivity issue. I mean, it seems like we should be pushing for more connectivity, go away from the one way in, one way out. And that's what was approved originally, was the through street. And so now the revision is we're going to get away from the connectivity and go back to a one way in, one way out, which is
Twice.
kind of twice on 2
Times
different
2.
subdivisions,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of what we've been trying to move away from in front of this commission because of the issue it has on traffic and safety and trying to create a true street grid. Now, whether or not this other road actually meets the 18-foot or not, I
They do.
don't know if there's any, thing that, has that
It
been
does?
measured?
Yeah,
Is
we
that-
measured that one the first time, and we wouldn't have been able to tie to it. Just like Cannon Road came before y'all with the last subdivision, you know, we
I
had to
have a
prove.
I have a question. This is completely off the mark here, and I don't mean to.
No,
steal
go
your
ahead,
thunder,
that's fine.
but, on these two, I mean, it looks like two subdivisions here. How, if I live on lot 50 and I wanted to get to my friend's house, that's lot 22, is there a pedestrian system that I can access that I don't have to leave the subdivision on Ballpark Road, go all the way up to Merritt Evans, over to Joe Severio, down to Glenn Williams, and come back in the subdivision?
No.
So
you
there's
jump
not a
the ditch. Well, you
pedestrian
can jump the
system in the subdivision to cross the proposed ponds and Henderson Bayou to connect the entire subdivision.
There does not appear to be one.
So we're going from one connected subdivision to really two smaller subdivisions.
And I would ask staff, isn't the pedestrian system a requirement of major subdivisions?
Well, sidewalks are certainly a requirement of major.
I'm just reading the statute here. It says, this is 174020.g. Pedestrian system is required in all major subdivisions. Each lot must have a pedestrian connection to all recreational amenities in the subdivision within 50 feet of the lot without crossing private property, blah, blah, blah. It does not look like this. I mean, there's sidewalks here, but if I wanted to go, I don't know where the recreational area in this subdivision is,
We have one on both sides.
but I can't get to the recreational areas on the other side of Henderson Bayou without leaving the subdivision, correct?
You could jump, other than jump in the ditch, no.
And it does say
Swim?
all recreation.
Right. So my question, and look, we have recreational areas and kids go out and fish out of our drainage retention ponds, but if I live in lot 50 and my son's best friend lives in lot 21 and they want to go fishing and the first proposed pond on the east side of Henderson Bayou, the only way they could connect up is if I drive out and take my kid over to that other subdivision. Correct?
Correct.
And are we also under the impression that originally this was supposed to be a private roadway,
It was.
and now it's not going to be private?
That is correct. This is removing that variance.
So we would now be ultimately wanting to bring this into the parish system?
Correct.
Both roads.
Yes. But again, this proposal that's before you, other than that possible, meets all codes and regulations by removing those original variances.
I disagree.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's a pedestrian system in there. I don't understand, I mean, I've never seen a subdivision where I had to leave to go to the other side of it.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I come up with something good. Any other questions, comments, and/or motion by the commission?
I'd make a motion to deny the variance request.
Motion to deny by,
No, sir.
What if we put a pedestrian bridge to connect the pedestrian systems along with walking trails?
I'd have to connect the entire, both streets. I mean, I don't, that's
Yeah.
that's not what's before us.
Okay.
So, I mean, it'd have to go over the ponds and then over the bayou and then over another pond. I just,
Or they could walk around the pond.
well, whatever. I don't know how it would work, but it would have to traverse from Chalet to Cozy Way.
Yeah. And you still have, I would still have concerns about the lack of connectivity. Just throwing it out there. That anybody else may not, I still would.
Okay.
Just so you know where I'm at on it.
We have are you motioning?
Yes, I think I either made or was in the process of making a motion to deny the request to
Well, it's the-
remove the variance.
No, it's a preliminary plat revision, so you're denying the revision.
Okay, then the.
All right, motion to deny the preliminary plat revision made by Mr. Chasson. Second? By Mr. Furman. All in favor of denying the revision?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Hearing none, the motion to deny the revision passes.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to number 12C, Cedar Springs Major Revision. Mr. Murphy, you're up again.
What this one is when we originally did the subdivision, we were gonna cascade over to Norwood Lakes, which is right next door. Then the parish came back and said, we have a policy, no cascading. Now they're wanting to cascade again.
We need to keep it quiet so we can conduct our business, please.
So basically, it's taking a treatment plant and making it a sewer pump station. And we got a force main going over to Norwood Lakes.
Staff?
And upgrading their system.
Yeah, I would add, part of our ongoing effort to get parish-wide sewer, we're trying to basically eliminate the number of sewer plants that we maintain. And this project, as Derek described, is going to provide a sewer main that's going to go up, I think it's Norwood Road, if I'm not mistaken, and tie into the neighboring subdivision.
Correct.
And tie into the existing sewer plant that's in that neighboring subdivision. This really would be a benefit to the parish because we'll be maintaining fewer sewer treatment plants. So we'd support this, and the utility department and the Department of Public Works supports this effort as well. All right.
All right, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this. Ms. Stacy, is anyone signed up to speak?
Kim Christie.
It's the same concern I had on the other one about the traffic impact analysis. And the packet basically says no comment. And if there's an old one and a letter provided for the new one, for the major revision, then perhaps the letter should be included in the packet so we, the public, can understand what's going on. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Ms. Christie, what this is doing, this is removing a 50 by 50 foot parcel for a sewer treatment plant and reducing it to a 25-foot parcel for a pumping station that's going to be turned over to the parish to interconnect the sewer. There are no other changes to the subdivision. It's that simple.
I understand.
Any other people signed up to speak? Ms. Stacy?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing on this.
Somebody just raised their hand.
Yes, sir, come forward. No, I think the only subdivision concerns the sewage disposal.
Just sewage?
Yes,
Not water, not traffic?
correct.
That's already corrected, there's not going to be any changes in that?
No, sir.
No, sir.
I mean, we really missed the boat on this on this subdivision.
Well, this, the preliminary plat was approved. I'm not sure, Derek, do you know when it was approved?
Oh, 2 years.
Okay. So the only revision, they're not changing the layout of the subdivision to make it into two or anything, they're just trying to increase.
I know, but I asked the parish once because of the water flowing on the Norwood Road. And they did come and fix one side, which is next to Mr. Pacento's house, so that the water from the property would not drain onto her property.
Sir, I'm sorry. Before you say anything, can we get your name for the record, please?
Anthony Landry.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But they did not, there is a ditch right in the middle of the property that drains on the Norwood Road. Now, none of this property ever drained on the Norwood Road in the past because they had a hill in front of it and all drained to the back where the pond is back there. And now there's a ditch in the middle of the property, which half of the property drains into that ditch, and that ditch drains onto Norwood Road, which affects everyone on Norwood Road. Now, I was under the impression that the property is supposed to hold the water that falls on it, and it goes to the pond in the back of the retention pond, which is going to hold that water for X period of time. That's just not going to happen. Only half of that property technically will drain to the back. The other half is going to drain to Norwood Road, which means it's going to increase the amount of water that we're seeing. And also, Ms. Alice Pacento's house is going to slow the water down that drains from her house or from that ditch in front of her home. So that's why I thought this was going to be to look at whether they were going to correct that or not.
have the
Well,
houses.
that's gonna come up in the final plat to make sure that, I mean, the numbers are there, the drainage study was performed showing that the land is not going to drain at a higher quantity or faster rate than what it currently is,
Yes,
or
sir.
when pre-production, and then that has to be all verified in final plat. Is that correct, Mr. Fournier?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this project has been constructed, actually, and the streets are finished, and rather soon it's going to be coming up with final plat approval, all right? So the only change that's been noted tonight is the sewer change. We met out at
Yes, sir, I
at
know.
your house and
And
met
you told me that y'all were gonna look at that ditch.
We did. And our DPW department went out there and looked at the ditch. And we'll be happy to go out there and meet with you again on that property
Well,
and
can the
make
ditch
sure that
be
everything's,
corrected?
I'm sorry?
Can the ditch be corrected? Shut down, stop, filled up, so the water drains all to the back to the pond where it's supposed to be.
I will work with DPW on that. We'll put in, and we'll go out there on the site and hopefully get there either this week or next and look at it again.
I would appreciate
All
that,
right?
if someone let me know.
Sure, I'll be happy to do that.
I would like
And
to-
I met with Ms.
Ms.
Palento
Placento,
out there as well on
And y'all
her
did
side.
correct her side. I
Right.
appreciate that very
Okay,
much.
right.
That water, all that water off that side of the property drains to the back now.
Okay.
But that part in the middle, that means half of those lots drain to the front.
Right, okay. Well, we'll go out there and look at it again, make it properly.
I
Right.
appreciate it.
All right.
One more comment I'd like to make to the parish is that let's not look, evidently it's something when we're building a subdivision, we deal with the number of houses, converted to the amount of traffic we're gonna deal with. Today's society, we deal with 2 cars per house. So if you're building a subdivision that's got 100 houses, we can't look at 100 cars or the traffic that 100 cars are gonna produce. We have to look at 200 cars, because that's what's gonna be coming out of that subdivision and going back in it. I think every subdivision should have an exit onto the road so that it reduces the slowdowning of the traffic going through to get in that subdivision also when it comes off of it. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, sir. All right, any questions, comments, and/or motion by the commission?
Can I just ask a quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just, 'cause I don't know much of anything about sewers, I'll admit that. I know there was an issue with a subdivision on 73 having its sewer drain into another subdivision's plant, and that caused some issues. I'm not sure what it is, but whether they did or did not have capacity or the ability to do that. And is that going to be a problem here at all? Or are we creating an issue or no?
Expanding the capacity in the sewer treatment plant that's back there already.
And those agreements are already in place. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? I think it's Dutchtown Hollows
Yeah,
or whatever
I
it
mean,
is
it-
in 73.
yeah, all of
We're
that's
not going to
There's
have a
cooperative,
repeat.
we trying to do this all over the parish
Right.
now.
So we're not gonna have a repeat of
and
whatever that
they
issue
got
is.
cooperative endeavor agreements put in place, or the parish does, they're working with whoever, the operator of those plants are. This is the best solution for the parish. This is consolidating as many, when we originally thought of this subdivision, that's the first thing we wanted to do was Cascade. We were told no because of the ownership and some of the issue. I think all that's been worked out over the last 2 years. Talking to staff now, they're like, man, I really wish we could, Cascade, and we can still do that because we haven't built the plant yet. So, and it's already, so that's kind of how this came up.
Okay.
To answer the other gentleman's concerns, there was a little, there was a small tract of property going to Norwood. We're meeting that. The rear of the lots, 39 to 36 and 28 to 31, they drain to Norwood from the back of those properties. Everything else drains to the back. We over-detain it. It goes into Henderson Bayou tributary. It's it meets the drainage impact study and everything. We're gonna be back before y'all probably in January on trying to get the final plat approved. I mean, this thing is basically by Christmas, they're gonna have the force main in, lift station, Norwood Lakes plant upgraded. We're ready to get out of this thing. And so, like I said, it's about as far as it can get. This is the last thing we have to do is go put in a 3-inch force main.
Yeah, and again, my only question was, I know they tried to do something like this on 73 and it caused an issue. We just wanted to make sure we weren't going to have a repeat of that, so.
All right.
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Motion to approve
Second.
by Mr. Chasson, second by Mr. Schexnayder. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Staff report.
Staff has no report right now.
All right, I would like to make a comment here on staff reports.
What about this? The expirations?
We're not there yet, Aaron.
Oh.
Just calm
Oh,
down.
I'm sorry.
We're getting there. I know I look very vacuous, but I can read an agenda.
I didn't have the agenda. This was my next.
On staff reports, I would like to see, beginning in January, the staff reports moved up higher in the agenda at the start of our general business. And I think it would behoove us to get updates on all of the major subdivisions or other developments that are going on, that there is work that could affect conditions that were put on based on approval. And specifically, the issue with Oak Lane, I've had several meetings with the developers, and all of the meetings, the developers seem shocked as to this condition. And well, we've been working with DOTD, and we've been working on this end and that end. And the one thing that it hasn't come back to is us. And I think that if we would have had these knowledge moving forward over the years, we could have alleviated some of the problems. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome, but certainly if the commission, however it's constituted, said, well, you put in this lane and that will alleviate the need for a turn lane, that would affect the developer's decision on what he's going to do one way or the other. So I would like staff to make it a point to update us on those goings on where there's discussion with the parish about that affect developments that will come ultimately before us for final plat approval or possibly for variances on what we had previously approved. And I'd like it at the beginning of the meeting, simply because right now, after 2+ hours, almost 3 hours of this, we're all tired and want to go home. And so I want to have that while we're fresh and can hear that.
We'll welcome that as staff, and if you have any comments, any of the commissioners would, give me input on that. We'll prepare a report for you.
Well, I know there's several major subdivisions that have, I think we talked about 4 yesterday, Belle Savon, the townhouse one that Mr. Berthelot had. There's several of them, and if there's something that's being worked on, whether it's from DOTD or any other agency that could affect the conditions that we put on, I'd like to have that. I'd like to have it in public at these hearings or at these meetings, and I'd like to have it early in the agenda at the beginning of our general business, not only for the purpose of being clear on it, but also for public scrutiny as well. So,
Can I also make a request?
Yes.
Or throw something out? Since it was brought up today about the requirement that if both at least as the code reads now, whether it should or shouldn't, both the construction plans and the final being within 6 months, we should be notified. That we also, staff during that report, notify us of any subdivision that has not, within the 6-month time frame, met both the final plat filing and the construction plan submitted, since that's what the article requires, and that the developers get notice if they want to appear, since we do have the right, based upon that, to rescind those approvals. That way there's no issue if for whatever reason, not saying it's going to happen or would happen, but if for whatever reason somebody decides for a particular one to rescind the approval, which we have the authority to do under the code, there's no issue about a developer not getting notice and not having the opportunity to speak their piece on it.
We'd be happy to do that. In addition, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we want you to be aware that in tomorrow night's council meeting, there is an item on the agenda about placing conditions and contingencies on plats and having those contingencies met before the final plat can be approved. We're working with legal counsel on the language, and so we'll report back to you on the status of that.
Great, thank you. All right, engineering staff report.
There's no report this month.
Does somebody want to address this?
Two subdivisions that have almost reached a 24-month without beginning construction. One is Ascension Business Park that was approved in January 2017. They have not even submitted construction drawings yet. So you certainly have the right to, or the plat will be automatically rescinded unless you would grant them an extension to that time. The other one on the item A2 is Black Bayou Estates. They were also approved in January of 2017. Their construction documents were approved by the ERA and staff on November 26th, just a couple of weeks ago. And I would imagine that they would like to ask you for some sort of extension, because that plat would also be automatically rescinded in January if you didn't grant them an extension.
Is anybody here on Ascension Business Park? Mr. Murphy, wasn't that one of yours?
I have to reach out to my clients and find out where they're at with that. I've been there for a little while. So, like Bayou Estates though, we just got the construction plans approved. It was a long process. It included stuff like water well approvals and things like that. So it took a
Well,
abnormally
as
long
it,
time.
as it turns out, by either fortune or luck, our next meeting is January 9th, which will be 2 days prior to the automatic rescission of these. So we can, I would ask that you provide us an update as to why these should not be rescinded. I mean, it sounds like Back Bayou States is fairly, that's in a progress, and there's just been delays that you can't control.
Correct.
Ascension Business Park, though, that might
I'll
be
find
a little bit
out.
more problematic, but I think we'd like to hear next month on that as well.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Thank you.
good enough. All right, does that satisfy you, Aaron? Anything else I missed? Item
Motion
number
to adjourn?
15, yes, move to adjourn. Merry Christmas to everybody who is still here, and Happy Hanukkah to our Hebrew brethren. I don't know if you're Hebrew, but we stand back.